All right, the time being 6 o'clock, I'll go ahead and bring this meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to thank everybody for attending the meeting tonight. Can we get a roll call, please?
Joe?
Here.
Sherry?
Here.
Don?
Here.
Gary?
Here.
Dan?
Here. Any of the commissioners have any reason to abstain for a financial or non-financial conflict of interest at this time?
No.
No. All right. Next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. We do have some things we're going to take off. Our state's attorney couldn't be here this evening. So I'd like to remove number 21. And did we want to remove 23 or did we want to keep that on there? Did he want to wait till he's here or?
Is our,
He said he had to change the resolution.
Okay, so he's not here to do that?
Yep.
So do we want to remove 23 as well?
is our state's attorney in the hospital or something?
I don't know, he's just couldn't be here today.
Couldn't be here.
I think we should leave it on and discuss why it's being changed.
Okay, we could have,
Yeah, I think
But
so
no
too.
action.
we'll leave
will probably be-
23, change
Yes.
it to a discussion.
Yes.
All right, discussion. All right, any other corrections to the minutes at this time?
And that was just that, 21, item 21.
21 will be removed till next meeting, and then 23 will be a discussion
Okay.
on amending. Any other corrections? Entertained a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion pass. All right, next item on the agenda, approval of the October 1st minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the past minutes? Did you have something
We
here?
did the claims last time. I voted no.
I did, I put that on.
You did?
Okay.
Very good.
I'd move approval.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right, next item on the agenda, public comment. Anybody care to make a public comment at this time? Going once. Going twice. All right, I'll go.
I was asked by Dale Canody to read this for him, and I will read from the beginning. I am wanting you to read this at the commission meeting tomorrow night. I am out of state at this meeting and ask for time for you to read this. I, Dale Canody, am very disappointed with the Yankton County Commission and State's Attorney with their handling of expired permits on the CAFOs. I have watched many not get an extension when having the chance to do so. The State's Attorney should attend all meetings, and meetings should be canceled if he cannot attend. I would like the State's Attorney to follow out the permitting process, and if these permits are not being following the laws, then order a cease and desist order. I find the applicants and attorney not showing up for the special meeting appalling. This problem should have been taken care of 9 days ago, and instead we are still wrestling with this problem and not following the ordinances set up in this county. Please deal with this elephant in the room and make sure permittees are following the rules. Otherwise, what is the point of having these ordinances? I am disappointed with our fresh air, clean water, and quality of life being taken away with expired permits. Sincerely, Dale Canody.
Right, thank you. All right, go ahead and close public comment this time. Next item on the agenda, item number 7, claims. Any questions on any of the claims?
Yeah, on page 2,
Page 2.
there's travel on there. The chairman's got one, and there's a 1 for Sherry Loest, 2 for Sherry Loest, 3 for Sherry Loest. Is that travel to Pier or what?
State convention for me.
State convention, yeah.
One of mine was for the state convention, one was for a District 3 meeting in Mitchell,
Okay,
and one was to pay for a room for our road committee in Gayville.
okay. Well, I guess I'm just going to bring up again, like I did last time, I was on the agenda a few months ago asking for some help to get to Washington DC to get us some bridges for Yankton County. And Commissioner Loest was extremely vocal on saying something to the fact that Yankton County doesn't have any money for you, Gary. So I didn't get any. So I just wanted to bring that up to attention. We want transparency, and I see the Attorney General has appointed a new attorney for transparency. So just want to bring that out in the open, that the taxpayers are paying for that travel, and not mine. Thank you.
Did you submit anything for travel reimbursement, Gary?
Pardon me?
Did you submit
No, I was denied at the meeting when I had it on the agenda. So why would I want to apply for it again?
I think the difference, Gary, is that the first 2 meetings that Sherry went to were commission-driven through the state and through District 3. The third one was a meeting with the 8 county or 2 county, I'm not sure what that one was, but those were meetings that were authorized and suggested by our state, we expected to attend, and yours was on your own personal.
No, it wasn't personal, because I was invited by the White House, and I met, and Vice President Pence was at the meeting. The Secretary of Agriculture, Sonny Perdue was there, FEMA, and I was invited there like all of you were. All the commissioners from the United States were invited. Only 3 commissioners from South Dakota showed up. One from Coddington, one from Lincoln, and myself. There's 3 to 5 commissioners. There were 66 counties in South Dakota, and of all there was several hundred there that day I was there. There was a wealth of information there. I made connections with people. The president has set up a new communication link from the White House directly to county commissioners. And as I came back, the second flood came up, and I've been feeding information to Washington, D.C., and the Assistant Secretary of the Interior told me after the meeting, because I cornered these people, and I said, we're desperate in Yankton County. We're a farming community. We're almost flooded out. The cans have been kicked down the road for bridges for years. We had $1 million taken from the Fleet Bridge Fund, given to Yankton, city of Yankton. And the commissioner she said, the Interior Secretary said, I know exactly where you're coming from, Gary. She looked me face to face and said, I'm going to try to find a grant for 1 bridge for Yankton County, not South Dakota, Yankton County. I said, we need 4 bridges. And she looked at the other people and said, you help him out. So I've been feeding information to Washington, D.C. directly. No middlemen, no representatives, no senators in between. I talked directly to Washington, D.C. I've been giving them newspaper articles. I've been giving them pictures of the floods. He said, the more ammunition I got, the more help I can get for Yankton County, not South Dakota, Yankton County.
Thank you, Gary. Any other questions on any of the claims?
Move approval.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Motion pass. Next item, Auditor Treasurer Report. Entertain a motion.
I move approval of the Auditor Treasurer Report.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion passed. Pooled cash report.
It was the same as the auditor and treasurer's
Okay.
report.
All right, mental illness quarterly report. We need a motion for this one too, right, Penny? Entertain a motion on the mental illness hearing report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion pass. All right. Next item, South Dakota Jobs Resolution. And this is just us with the new KFRO program, correct? And just approving this?
Correct.
So, any questions on that? Entertain a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. And the last one is budget supplements. Did you have anything you wanted to talk about on this one?
You received the totals that I put in there. And there will be some, because we'll have a meeting at the end of December to end the year. And there might be some budgets that'll have small amounts that need to be transferred, and I can take that out of the contingency fund.
Okay.
But these are bigger amounts that would take most of the contingency funds, so.
Okay. Any questions on the budget supplements? Entertain a motion.
Move approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. All right. Next item on the agenda, item number 8, Welfare Quarterly Reports. Mrs. Adamson, welcome.
Jennifer Adamson from County Welfare. Just reporting that third quarter, there were 3 applications for assistance, 34 notice of hospitalizations, 2 jail bills were repriced, Medicare rate, and 12 letters were sent to individuals about a request for payment from individual hospitals.
Any other concerns that you have? No?
Not at this time.
Is this the time of year where you get a little busier with the holidays coming
We're
around?
picking up. It has been this month.
Well, I'd just like to say in Pierre, I had a lot of people said what a great job you do throughout the state. You know, how we're so lucky we have somebody who cares so much. No, and that's true. And I spoke with the Tri-State Old Iron Society last night. I gave a speech on the James River Water District, and the contact center came up and what a great job you do there. So, not solicited from me, from audience members.
Got a
So.
great bunch of people that I work with. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions from the board? All right, need a motion to approve?
Move
Report.
approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passed. Thank you very much. All right. Next item on the agenda, item number 9, Nurse Quarterly Report. Ms. Welcher, welcome.
Good evening. So did everybody get a copy of the report?
Yes.
Were there any questions about it? Just this time of year, our busy, kind of our busy flu season is our big event coming. So we're going into the schools to do flu shots for the kids. So that'll start next week. Keep us busy.
Have you started doing employee flu shots yet? Or?
Tomorrow is our first scheduled day.
okay.
So.
And that is or is not mandatory, I guess? Is that mandatory for employees or it's not?
For some state employees, like,
Okay.
I know HSC employees are required
Okay.
to get it. If they don't want it, they don't have to, but they would have to wear a mask.
Okay.
What is this?
I just need your sign, this is the resolution they just approved, you guys just approved.
Okay. I want somebody to explain it to me before I signed it, so can I have a copy of it?
As soon as I get everybody's.
Okay.
Any mumps cases?
I knew that was coming.
Yeah.
There have been 3 confirmed, as far as I know, the last I heard. I haven't really been getting any updates, but they are in the school system. So schools are requesting parents whose children are not vaccinated, keep them home for a certain number of days.
I've got one at home quarantined right now, so.
Is that true that the confirmed mumps cases are only when the test shows positive, like an inconclusive one where the probability is they have mumps and it's inconclusive, that they don't actually count that? Is that correct? I'm sorry, I don't mean to play stump the nurse or anything, but,
Well, I know that they were getting positive results, and
Okay.
they were waiting to determine if they developed symptoms.
oh, okay,
So,
okay,
I don't know that they can
Okay.
unless there are symptoms.
okay.
Dan, is her mic on?
I don't know, is that on?
Hello?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
There, turn it on.
It didn't sound like it.
Joey, you want
Mine's
to
on.
turn
Is it
that on?
the podium?
Might turn that little.
There we
There
go.
you go.
There we go.
Thanks.
Thank you, Patty.
Thought maybe I was just on the phone. Any other questions?
Well, looks like you've been keeping pretty busy.
Yeah.
Any other questions for anyone in the board? Any questions for nurse from the audience?
Can you just mention, so it's on the record too, that mumps vaccine is a live virus and people who are immune suppressed cannot take that?
Right, right. Mumps is a live virus, and those who are not, or who are immunocompromised, they don't recommend getting that. So yeah, we do have children, like we said, with religious exemptions, medical exemptions, if there's a reason that they can't have it. So we're just trying to keep them safe from being exposed.
Any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Entertain a motion to approve the nurse quarterly report.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion pass. Next item on the agenda, item number 10, ambulance quarterly reports. Mr. Hawkins. Welcome.
How's everybody?
Good.
Good.
Good. Well, as you can probably tell right off the bat that we have a different little format. Commissioner Lowe's kind of assisted and helped put together a spreadsheet that kind of shows the year right in front of you, see how how the year progresses. So, and then it has the historical 4-year historical data over in the right-hand lower corner there. It kind of shows where we were, what our average is over the last 4 years for some kind of comparison there. So, I guess the question I have is, do you have any questions about the report? You have one?
How's everything
Got off
going?
easy on that one.
How's everything going at the ambulance?
What's that?
How's everything going at the ambulance? You guys keeping busy?
Everything's staying busy. We're kind of, well, I should say, we were very busy over the summer. Things are kind of slowing down a little bit now. Everybody's able to kind of regroup and kind of get themselves back to a normal setting, if you will.
Do you see any spikes during the holiday seasons or
Wow,
for uses?
Yes and no. Depends. I think a lot of it has to do with the weather. So if there's a real big cold snap that comes in, lays a lot of snow down, we're going to be really slow. You know, people are going to kind of stay in, and and it also will depend upon what the flu season has. Right now, there's kind of a GI bug that's going around the community that's kind of moving us a little bit. But if the flu comes in like they say, it may be real busy. It all depends. So everybody get your flu shot. There you go.
There you go. How we doing on collections for?
It shows right there. Looks like we're at about a 206 deficit, $206,000 deficit. But that there's a lot of money out there that hasn't rolled in from the insurance companies yet from the summer.
Okay.
So we have to kind of, and if you look, once soon as summer hits, if you look at this, as soon as summer hits, that's when our costs go up. And that has to do with, salaries are going up, there's more people out on the street, there's more supplies being used, so it takes a while to recoup that through the insurance process. So hopefully in the next few months, we'll be able to see it, and then, I never get too awfully excited looking at that until we get to towards the end of the year, or even at where we're at, at the end of the year, because you don't know what that's going to entail. So, and then if I can move on into the next item here is we have a transport agreement that we've had with Sacred Heart for 4 years-ish. I think it's been, and what this transport agreement is for inpatients that are that need to be transported from the specialty hospital on Fox Run to Sacred Heart, because they're inpatients. The insurance is a little bit different. When they're inpatient, it's Medicare A, if you will, and that does not cover any outpatient services. So any outpatient services then have to be contracted or have an agreement for that cost. And the other thing is if something were to happen and somebody needed a CAT scan at the hospital during the time that their CAT scan is being under maintenance, for those half a day when it goes in maintenance, then if it's an acute situation, they'll call us and we'll run them across the street to the cancer treatment center, and they're still all an inpatient kind of thing. And so this agreement just kind of covers that and gives them a rate for us to charge them. And on the memo, it kind of shows what the first one is, what the old one is, what the one that I talked to them about and they gave us, or they've agreed upon, and they want to put down what Medicare rates are. So just so you can kind of see that.
Looks like it's not used real often.
We used it once in 2018 and once in 2019 so far. So
Okay,
not
not
very often.
How does that work since both facilities are now Avera? I know before it was Lewis and Clark Specialty, and then they've been purchased by.
And that would have been, when it was Lewis and Clark Specialty, we didn't need to have the agreement.
Oh, okay.
Because what they do is, one hospital will discharge them, put them in an outpatient setting, so then we pick them up and take them to another hospital, and then it's Medicare B or an outpatient service. That's what happens when Sacred Heart transfers to McKinnon or Sanford or Mercy. They discharge them, and then we then can charge for our services, and then they readmit them when they get to the designated hospital.
Okay. Any other questions from anyone on the board?
Nope.
Anyone from the audience have a question or care to speak on this? All right, I guess I'll bring it back to the board. So you need a motion to approve your report, and then you'd like a motion to approve the agreement for ambulance and medical transportation services, correct? You wanted to do that tonight?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
Move approval of the report.
Okay. I have a motion to approve the report. Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passed. Next thing, we'll entertain a motion on an agreement for ambulance and medical transportation services.
Move approval of the transport agreement with Avera.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Healy,
Yes.
Los,
Yes.
Swenson,
Yes.
Kettering,
Yes.
Flemish.
Yes, motion passed.
You want me to sign this now?
Yeah, I can sign that now, if you'd like. Anything else? Any other good news for us? All right.
Not yet. Yeah, I do have some good news.
What do I sign?
But
Back to the microphone.
Right here.
No, I don't have any really good news. We come in, next week to talk about, next time, because it didn't get to me in time, was, those life packs that you guys had, we had budgeted for and talked about over the 4 years. I got the finance rate to 0. So that was good news for me. I was pretty happy about that.
Great.
So, but I'll talk about that.
All right, any other questions for Mr. Hawkins? Appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
1 o'clock.
All right.
Thank you guys very
Thank you.
much. Be safe out there. It's getting cooler.
All right. Next item on the agenda, item number 11, Register of Deeds Quarterly Report. Mr. Hunoff. We're a few minutes ahead of schedule. That's always a good thing.
We'll
So,
see if we can keep that
yeah.
moving. I don't think I need 5. Thank you. This is my third quarter report, another good quarter. We had a total of 2,047 transactions in the third quarter, an average of 682 per month. Just hit a couple of the high points. We average 105 birth certificates a month, 130 death certificates a month, 36 marriage certificates per month, 96 deeds per month. Going down to fees collected, we collected 84,922 in the third quarter. That averages 28,307 per month. And total real estate sold in the third quarter was 32.1 million. So that's a 10.7 million per month average in real estate activity. And again, that's another strong number that we've seen about 6-7 months in a row now. And that over 10 million a month mark.
wow.
So, any questions about any of the figures?
I was just looking at that death certificates in July. 146 people died?
No, it's not quite like that. A death certificate is proof that somebody died. Only family members
okay.
can get these. And
Gotcha.
so for estates, sometimes one person will die and they'll buy 8 death certificates.
Sure.
Yeah, I used
Thanks.
to think it was a death too. I had to.
I was doing the marriage and birth, and then
Yeah.
we were losing bad.
No. With the birth certificate, that's, first only orders one, or a marriage certificate. But death certificates, because of estates, quite often they'll order 4, 5, 6, who knows how many. Good question.
Any other questions for Mr. Hunoff? Any from the board? Any questions from the audience, Mr. Hunoff? Well, we appreciate all the hard work you're doing. All right, I entertain a motion for to approve the Register of Deeds quarterly report.
So moved.
Go ahead, Gary.
Is there a second?
I will.
A second. Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Brian.
Moving right along, next item on the agenda, item number 12, Sheriff Quarterly Report. Welcome.
Good evening. Have all the documents, the last 3 months.
A lot of them. Been busy.
The jail remodel is going well. As with any construction project, when you marry an old building with a new building, they find a couple problems, and they've had a couple change orders that have come about, plumbing issues. Plumbing issues and the like, but I think they're on schedule and everything seems to be going well. You'll notice that, of course, the jail income's gone down a little bit because we don't have the space. So far this year, I've calculated we're down about 87,000, but we're still at 1,336,000 roughly for the year. So yeah, we're probably close to equivalent as last year, being down a little bit. The office for service of process and the like, and the commissions for sale of real estate under foreclosure, we're at right at a little over 100,000. So it's about normal for the last couple of years.
Jim, how do you arrange for covering of the county roads for traffic violations?
Well, I mean, we only have so many deputies out at a time, you know, during the day. The deputies on during the day are answering calls or doing our other statutory duties. At night is when the guys are patrolling normally, and that can be, you know, we try to keep 2 out. Sometimes when you have people sick, there's 1 out, and if they're answering calls, they're in one end of the county, so, you know, it's hit and miss.
Any idea when the remodel is going to be completed? Do you have?
Hopefully before the end of the year.
Okay. Okay.
I think another month or so.
Okay.
They're moving right along.
Once that's completed, how long do you think before you'll have that populated? Is it going to be an immediate thing? Is it going to be a few months before? You just have to wait and see?
Wait and see.
So we can do.
I'm confident it'll.
Yeah. Okay. It'll give you a little more space in that area too, so.
And that's, you know, they call it the women's jail, but it isn't. It's just a section that the women populated. And so right now we can't hold, other than our own female population in the jail.
Sure. Any other questions for the sheriff? Any questions from the audience for the sheriff? All right. Thank you. We appreciate it. Entertain a motion to approve the sheriff quarterly report.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion pass. All right, next item on the agenda, item number 13, Veteran Service Quarterly Report. Mr. McDonald, welcome.
Good evening, all. Lucky number 13. This past quarter has probably been the heaviest quarter that we've seen so far this year. So far to date, we're about 40 contacts above what we were the same period last year. I think a lot of that has to do with the July 1st statement about Agent Orange, Blue Water Agent Orange cases. I'm getting calls. Folks are passing the word. That's a good thing, and hopefully we will be able to assist Blue Water Navy veterans and their families in obtaining the benefits from the VA. Went to the state school in August. We had a pretty good school. I had to take my test. I passed again, so I can keep on doing this for another year. We are always in need of DAV van drivers. Dan has put his name in the hat. We're waiting for the VA to get a hold of him and do his background check and all this other good protocol. But we've been busy. So are there any questions you might have about any?
Bravo Battery, boots on the ground in Fort Bliss. They'll be back
in November.
Pretty soon.
Yeah.
Are there any plans to?
I'm going to get a hold of my district field officer, and hopefully we do a yellow ribbon ceremony.
Okay, I think that would be a good thing. And
we're waiting for a date. And I'm not. I'm not saying anything because I don't want angry.
Sure.
Spouse meets.
Yeah, exactly. I think it would be nice if we could do, have something at the ceremony where, these guys have some veteran benefits that they've likely earned, and, sometimes they don't always get told about them right away, and we could do our part, so. All right. Any other questions for Mr. McDonald?
How many veterans we got in the county down?
Our veteran population is down to about 1,619 according to the VA. It is decreased, if I'm not mistaken, in the last 10 years it's decreased by 22%. However, when it comes to the federal dollars that are in, from 10 years ago till now, we're about almost at 1.5 times the money that
that we were receiving back in 2009. I think it was like $7.8 million back in fiscal year 2009, and now we take in almost $11 million in compensation, pension, educational, the whole shooting match. So we're an integral part of the economic community, because those dollars are spent by folks. It's not anything that they're putting away for saving. They need it to make it, from month to month, paying monthly bills, taking care of medical conditions and such, educating, returning veterans. I would mention one thing, though. And we have Yankton employers that are looking for good help. I would remind them that the young people that we have serving in our military these days are quite technically advanced. This is not a grunt rifleman mentality anymore. These guys are using some high-tech equipment, and they have some very good skills. So if we are looking for good people to man our manufacturing businesses and getting into business, period, and you're looking for somebody that's got some focus, start looking at these young people, especially those that get up there to E5, E6, E7, 8, get into the warrants position. These are bright people, and they've proven that they know how to complete a mission. They know that's what they were trained to do. So if you have a mission for your business, for your company, I strongly urge you to start taking a look at these young veterans that are coming back. They're just great folks.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't it federal law that a veteran is guaranteed an interview? Or
he's supposed to receive an interview if he meets the minimum qualifications for any position in a county, municipal, state, or federal job that's offered. And sometimes it doesn't happen.
So there's been cases where they've been denied, is that correct, or?
It's been overlooked.
Overlooked?
I'll put it that way, it's been overlooked.
Yeah.
So.
That's unfortunate.
Yep.
What's the turnaround time for starting the paperwork for veteran benefits and receiving them now? Do you have any idea? Is it
the fastest time for me when it came to filing a compensation case? I got one resolved in 118 days. It is a slow process. It's not as slow as it used to be. It used to take up to a year and a half to 2 years sometimes when we were on a paper, strictly a paper basis. Now the forms that we are using, they're usually an EZ form, so they're electronically pushed on through the queue, the national queue, and it is faster. It's still painstakingly slow. Same thing with pension. Sometimes we can get an expedited case if we have a veteran that is in dramatically failing health. If we've got somebody that's looking to live maybe several days, there's somehow that they manage to push those through, but it's very, very rare. But generally, I would say the average for me, 6 to 7 months. The 118 days is rare. Be patient.
Yeah.
I ain't giving up on anybody.
Well, we appreciate that. Any questions for Mr. McDonald? Any questions from the audience for Mr. McDonald? We appreciate all the hard work you're doing. Did you have something, Dan?
Some, not many, but some of the officers are all right too. You went through all of the enlisted ranks and the warrants.
But you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do.
We do know. We do know that. They always forget.
The non-coms, the officers are there, and they're bright guys too. But I'm telling you, when you're looking for somebody to get the job done, you get an E6 or E7 that knows what's going on, it gets done. So.
You're right. Thanks.
Thanks a lot, appreciate it.
I'm sorry. Overlooked the officer.
We knew what he meant, right, Don? So,
I just pulled your
it's
leg.
the lieutenant who shows up at the formation without the right equipment. So, entertain a motion to approve the Veteran Service Quarterly Report.
So moved.
Gary,
I have a motion from Gary, is there a second?
yes.
Second from Don. Motion and a second, further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda, item 14, right-of-way from Golden West. Welcome, Mr. Solodchik.
This first one I have is Golden West, put a 2-pair of fiber directional bore underneath 430th Avenue. Would be about a half a mile north of 46. On 430, it'd be just north of the Westerville Road.
Been doing quite a bit of work out there, haven't they? Is that in that same area?
Yep.
Is this for that, what was that power, or that power facility, or what is this for?
Going just to a
Okay.
residence.
Residence.
Move approval of the right-of-way.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion pass. All right, next item, what is
Same
it?
thing, Golden West.
Golden West, another one.
Be Westerville Road and 304th, be Joe Substation, approximately a half mile east on 304th. There's a new residence there. Just looking for a service hookup there. Vibratory cable plowing and directional borer.
Same type of thing, right?
Yep.
Move approval of the request.
Second.
A motion, and I'll give that one to Sherry. Second, further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion pass. All right, next item, what do we got? Entrance applications?
Entrance apps. Two of them for East River Co-op, south of Utica, about a half a mile on 435th. They're putting in a new substation on the east side of the road. There is an existing driveway there to the south for the field approach. The farmer, right now, I guess at the half mile line there is a field approach going into both fields. Well, that's where the new substation is going. So just south of that is where the proposed approach would be located, and they will remove the existing approach in the low area.
Okay. So there's two there now, they're gonna remove one and add,
They're gonna
The
remove
other
the far
one.
south one,
okay.
because the one at the half mile line will service the north field.
So how close are they gonna be within each other, those two approaches, and
100 yards.
It's at 350 feet.
350 feet,
The map.
okay.
There,
I
yep.
see that.
And this one would be for the entrance for the field ground right there.
Any more questions from anyone? Any questions from the audience on this? All right. Entertain a motion.
Move approval of the entrance application.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion pass. All right, thank you very much.
Well, there's a second one
Oh,
here.
there's a second.
Same
Got
for
it.
East River.
All right, got it.
This one would actually be the approach for the substation, the same project we were just talking about.
Okay.
just going into the substation there. To the north, there'll be a entrance going into the farm ground, and then south will be the substation, and then south of the substation will be another one into the field.
Any questions from anyone on the board on this one? All right, entertain a motion.
Move approval of the entrance app for the substation.
Second.
Motion and a second, further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion passed. Thank you very much. Any updates on, why we got you here, any updates on roads? Were you able to get
Stone Church and
Jamesville?
Jamesville bridges will be inspected tomorrow morning.
Okay.
They will be there at 9 o'clock. The road repair on Stone Church we just finished that up today. On the shoulders, last week we patched the asphalt up.
Okay.
Jamesville, well, we're gonna have to do some rip wrapping there.
Okay.
Also along with Stone Church, there was some scouring on the west side, and then same with Jamesville. We had had the backhoe on the bridge, talked to Clark, they said go for it. Had all the trees moved out from underneath them. Fleegs, went under there today again. The water receded, the tree pile's bigger than we were thinking. We need to get a long reach excavator on the bridge there sometime. Other than that, I guess have culverts, gotta get back after the culverts. I think we have 13 culverts left to replace, and some gravel to haul, some roads to patch yet. As long as the weather holds out, we'll keep after it. So.
Race against the weather, right?
That's right.
That's all you can do. So Stone Church Road should be open tomorrow?
It's what we're banking on.
Right.
As soon as they say it's okay, we'll open it up right then and there.
Kent's behind you, so he's gonna let me know if that's true. He'll know. So, all righty. Any other questions for Mike? All right, we appreciate all the work you're doing. Thank you.
You guys want me to stick around for the...
Ken, if you'd like.
All righty. Next item on the agenda, item number 15, repair of road or alternative access for Mr. Mike Marlowe. Is he here this evening? Mr. Marlowe here? Don or Sherry, did any of you guys?
You met with them out there.
I met with them, Mike, their attorney representing the landowner to the north, and we looked through the property. It's kind of a mess. There is access to the southwest portion of that quarter section of ground from the west side. And through that, we discussed the possibility of using his own field, going north to where the water runs across the quarter line. And I think, my understanding is he's engaging Bob Law to build put a couple culverts in there so he can access his corner.
So are the landowners are trying to work this out?
The landowners are trying to work together and get it done.
Okay. So this has been on the agenda a couple weeks now. I guess if they're gonna work it out, that's the best case scenario. So should we just have this off, and if that doesn't work out, then they come back to us, or is that?
Yeah, we should probably make sure we follow up, I guess, on this, but.
Well.
Is Mr. Marlowe's letter, does he talk about participating in the cost share on that?
There's nobody here to speak on this, is there?
Let's move it on to the next meeting then, but before you take it off, but I had indicated that it would be very difficult for me to cost share on that piece of property because there's probably dozens of them in the county. And if we start doing that for one, we'll do it for the other. So an option that they may look at is to ask us to give right away from the north to the property across an easement across the landowners, the land to the north.
We want to move this to next meeting then? Is that the plan we want to do? Since there's nobody here to speak on it?
Who's going to call Mr. Marlowe to make sure they want to be on the agenda?
I think
They may have reached a decision.
Originally, I think we had Don, and Don went, and then he was not able to attend the last couple meetings, and then I believe at the last meeting, you were going to call with the state's attorney.
I
right?
can certainly give
Okay.
Mike a call.
So I don't, one of you two, whoever, have you spoke with Mr. Marlowe yet?
No, I did not,
Okay.
because I spoke with Don, and Don had met with them, and they were going to try to work it out.
Okay.
So I took no action at that point.
Don, do you want to
They're
keep,
putting it, I'll do it.
you'll follow up and let us know, I
They're
guess?
putting that northeast corner into CRP. So once they put it into CRP, the only reason they'd have to access it is when they have to spray for the next 10 or 15 years, I suppose.
Or cut it
Yeah, or
every
cut
5
it.
years or 8 years, whatever it is.
I didn't get the impression that the landowner to the north, Mr. Gall, was, he may have said he didn't want to cooperate, but I think he kind of indicated he might cooperate for something like that. Now, the CRP, according to Mr. Cody, he can't enter it until the 1st of November, and they can't plant, they have to have it planted before the 1st of November. So this year is a moot point anyway, they can't plant it. So I think they want time to work it out.
Okay.
Okay. And then I spoke with Mr. Cody, he's the land manager, and kind of reiterated that they were looking at putting some access on their own property across that versus the easement, but he's requesting the that south road. At least we run a maintainer across it and get it into shape so that they can get equipment up.
He's gonna haul gravel in on that road.
And that's
the landowner.
County road, but there's water. It doesn't go the whole mile. There's water across it, so it dead ends into water. So he's requesting that next time we're on the north-south road on the west side of the property that we just run down and get it into shape so they can get their equipment down.
Is that a no-maintenance road, or what kind of, do you know anything about that, Mike? So it's a no-maintenance road?
That south one?
Yeah.
Running east and west? No, it's not a no.
Right.
Should it be a no-maintenance road? It should be, yeah.
It'll never go through all the way.
No.
Sure.
I mean, it'll never.
Back in the 80s, I think it did.
No, I pulled the beacon pictures back to, was it '08, '09, when they first started, and water was always over that chunk, was not always over the north part where they're looking at putting the culverts in. So there has been access to that property over all these years, except for now we're really wet, and now there's no access on his north side.
And Mr. Gall did let them have access to harvest their crops this fall.
Okay,
Okay.
so, all right.
All right, so Don,
You're gonna
you'll-
give Mike a call?
Yep.
You'll
We'll
follow
close it
up?
out, hopefully.
all right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Don. Appreciate that. All right. Anything else on that?
No.
All right, moving on. Next item on the agenda, item number 16, cleaning of county culverts in Utica. Mayor Hoffman, welcome.
Right. City of Utica is 99% done with all the maintenance items that we recovered from the spring flooding. We do have a couple culverts, and we're assuming since they go underneath county roads, they're actually county items to maintain. So, we have a couple that we'd like to have looked at. One in particular, this year if possible. I know that's a stretch. I did bring maps. I didn't attach a map originally. I apologize for that. I do have some rather crude colored maps if you'd like to take a look. And I do, there's one that's really in particular for us because water in that section of town that flooded so severely in the spring does flow from west to east and then travels north. And so everything that we fix off of 2nd Street would bottle up if we don't have that cleared up, if there was another such event in the spring. So that's what we're requesting, if we could have at least that one item made a priority, hopefully for this year. The rest, obviously, can be maintained separately, or if we have permission to do it ourselves. Because we had a contractor there, we started to, and he's like, no, I think that's county. And it's like, oh, sorry. We were planning on doing that. So either we get permission just to do it and get that in writing so that we have some protection, or if it has to be your people doing it, that's fine too. We would just ask for some assistance with that.
Permission granted.
Do you want me to speak for you, or would you like to speak for yourself?
I'm not listening to Mike, I'm sorry. Just kidding.
No, I met with Mike this afternoon, and he showed me the 3-page list of the stuff you get done before the snow flies, and you are on that list.
Oh, really? Yay.
You are.
Oh,
So,
save myself some time.
but with our second flood around that little thing called the James River,
I know.
it's put us much behind, so, but you are on that list.
Perfect. And this is the intersection by the railroad tracks at the angle.
Going east and west.
Yeah, east and west, or this little corner right here, because it comes across right here. I'm sorry, this is a terrible picture. Sorry about that.
Is it as simple as just to take a backhoe and scrape the inlet and outlet of
I
that?
believe it is. The one that we ended up doing in the spring, when we were trying to save the paved road, we simply had a shovel attached to a very long stick, and we were just jamming it in there to break the ice out and some of the debris. I did not actually go down into that culvert to look at it before this meeting, so I couldn't tell you the shape of it. But I assume it's just a very simple item. It seemed like it was a simple maintenance type item.
Okay. I was gonna say, if you have a contractor there, I don't care if they scratch the dirt away from the inlet and outlet, and if it requires more, we can do more, or else you can wait until Mike gets to it, but
Sure.
it's,
I just-
I don't have a problem if you
Okay.
want.
I didn't think it was our item to touch and not wanting to damage anything that isn't ours.
Right.
It's like, well, we need to ask to make sure.
Yep. I actually went out to this project while she was working on it, and I'd just like to applaud Utica, way to be proactive in cleaning out some of those ditches. They've been needed to be cleaned out, I think, for a long time, so that should really help the drainage of the town there, so.
Like I said, we're 99% done. We found another spot. I think we could use a culvert
Okay.
and a couple little grates that we're gonna fix up as well. But I
Okay.
think for the most part, when we meet with FEMA on the 1st, we'll be ready to go. So we are done.
Okay. So you're just looking at permission to
Right. Yeah,
clean those
permission
culverts?
Just to, if we need to do it ourselves, great. If Mike's crew has time, that's
Okay.
even better, because obviously it's their item, and
Okay.
I don't want someone to accidentally damage it if it's not our property. So whatever works out best for everyone.
Okay, I don't know. Like, I guess I'd leave it up to Don and Sherry. I don't even think we probably need a motion on this one. If it's fine with you guys, I don't see any issue with that, so.
Okay.
All right.
That would better be
Yeah.
nice neighbors and ask.
Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. All right. Anybody need to take a break? Keep on going? All right, entertain a motion to go into Board of Adjustment.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now in the Board of Adjustment. First item on the agenda, item number 17, appeal of a decision to rescind a stop work order. Mr. James Desai. Mr. Desai here?
Yes.
welcome.
Thank you.
I didn't get anything from him today.
May it please the board, my name is Jim Desai, attorney for Beersford. The appellants are Sandy Desai, Karen Dawson, and Barbara and Dennis Michaels. On or about August 6, 2016, the Yankton County Commission meeting convened, and the following excerpt from the minutes of said meeting read, quote, drainage/public nuisance. The board, along with Rob Klimish and Brian McGinnis, discussed the procedure to handle the unlawful drainage and public nuisance complaint submitted by James Desai. Paragraph, open quote, action 19347 Zebra. A motion was made by Loest and seconded by Healy to move forward with enforcement process. All present voted aye. Motion carried. Close quote. On or about August 23rd, Mr. McGinnis served a stop work order on Mr. Anthony. On or about August 26th of 2019, Mr. McGinnis met with Neil Anthony, Denise Anthony, Scott Reinhardt, his attorney, Leroy and Trudy Nelson, and Mr. McGinnis rescinded the stop work order. Mr. McGinnis failed to execute the enforcement process that the County Commission ordered him to do on August 6th, 2019. Thereafter, his employment was terminated. Appellants filed and served their notice of appeal with the Board of Adjustment because of the zoning administrator's failure to do the job he was ordered to do. The county commissioners, having made their decision that Neil Anthony's massive excavation project on lots 4A and 5 constitute a hazard and threat of property damage to the adjacent properties, lots 11, 12, and 13 of Block 3 Oak Hills Addition, as well as placing fear of personal injury in all of the Soviet tenement landowners, their families, guests, invitees, and agents. It is now the Board of Adjustment's task to move forward with the enforcement process. The appellants are petitioning the board to execute the enforcement process by ordering Neil Anthony and Denise Anthony to demolish and remove the public nuisances that Neil Anthony built on lots 4A and 5, Lot 3 of Oak Hills Addition specifically. 1, to demolish and remove the 5-level high monster block wall, and that would be 10 feet high now. Since the stop work order was rescinded, another level of blocks was added to that monster block wall. So, I mean, there's been more harm done since that stop work order was rescinded. Secondly, to demolish and remove the concrete foundation upon which the monster block wall sets. Third, to remove all the fill, dirt, clay, rubble, rock, crushed rock that Anthony dumped onto lots 4A and 12. 4, that said demolition and removal be commenced immediately and completed within 45 days from the date that the Board of Adjustment orders it entered and served on Anthony. And I do feel that it's appropriate to put a time limitation on Mr. Anthony. And I feel that since you have a 5-0 vote by the commission a couple of months ago, 2.5, 3 months ago, it's reasonable then that the Board of Adjustment would reinforce that 5-0 vote and enter an order for Mr. Anthony to proceed on whatever terms it is that you deem, so that if he fails to do that, or if he fails to appeal to the circuit court, those burdens are on his shoulder. Further, we request that the Board of Adjustment order Neil Anthony and Denise Anthony to immediately remove the black drainage tiling tube from lot 11. That goes behind Karen Dawson's home. Further ordering that neither Neil Anthony nor any of his agents or employees shall ever allow water to flow from lots 4A and 5 onto, over, or across lots 11, 12, and 13. And that also then should include any successors in interest.
Which lots were those? Read all those lots again.
Okay, the water on the uphill side, the dominant tenement would be owned by Denise Anthony, lots 4A and 5. And the servient tenements are lot 11, which is owned by Ms. Dawson, lot 12 that's owned by Sandy DeSay, lot 13 that's owned by Barbara Michaels. Also, we request that the board order that Neil Anthony and Denise Anthony's failure to comply with the order of the Board of Adjustment, that the board proceed to abate the nuisances which claim lot 4A to its physical condition immediately prior to Mr. Anthony's massive excavation, and assess costs of such demolition and reclamation to and upon lots 4A and 5, which are the properties that Mrs. Anthony owns. The board directed its zoning administrator secretary to provide me with copies of the invoices, and I also asked that you ask or direct the Jessica Atkinson, I think is the lady who would be in possession of those papers and documents. That all papers, invoices, documents, and blueprints that Mr. Anthony gave to Mr. McGinnis on or about August 26th, that we get a copy of, that I receive a copy of all of those papers and documents. And finally, any additional relief that the Board of Adjustment deems fit and proper on the premises. Thank you. Appreciate your consideration. Any questions?
Where's that water gonna run? From up the hill, down the hill, where's it gonna run?
Well, there's ample case law that allows the drainage to go downhill, and that's by the Supreme Court of South Dakota. But it cannot come downhill in any greater speed or create any rivers or rivulets or gullies than what had been in existence before the hill had been made into a hill. In other words, before he had the dirt and whatever all else he put in that mixture.
So when was the Anthony house built?
I don't know that answer. It was owned 154 Oak Hills Drive, the house property, which is lot 5, was previously owned by Leroy Nelson and his wife. They owned it as of 2003 because Mr. Nelson attempted to do something similar with what was then called Lot 4, and we all met in brotherly and sisterly love and affection before the commission and discussed the issue, and he was allowed to continue on his project, but the commission ordered that he had to make the water run down Oak Hills Drive rather than dumping it on top of lots 11, 12, and 13.
Were 11, 12, and 13 developed at that time?
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Karen Dawson and her husband, who is now deceased, Jim, had lived in the A-frame on lot 11 for decades. Sandy's lot 12, her father built that cabin in 1960 or 61. She and her sisters were raised out there, and then we bought it from her parents 25 or more years ago. And then lot 13 that's owned by Barbara Michaels. I don't know when that house was built, but they've been living there ever since we've known them. So all of those properties were there prior to the date that Leroy Nelson tried to change the contour of lot 4.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Are there any other questions?
You said since the stop work order was rescinded that another layer had been placed on top?
One additional level of monster blocks was set on top, which would raise it to 5 levels of monster blocks. And several more loads of dirt. One of, I'm saying it was Mr. Anthony Trucking Semis, hauled up one batch of monster blocks on or about September 20th and set them on Lot 4A. They came up Oak Hills Drive, which I don't think is designed for a semi tractor trailer rig. I don't think it's, well, I don't know how much weight it's designed to handle. And then on September 25th, another semi and tractor trailer came up there with a load of gravel or dirt combination and dumped that onto Lot 4A. And of course, then they had to back down the hill ever so slowly because there are no turns that are gradual enough at the top of Oak Hills Drive for the semi and the trailer to turn and go down forward. They had to back down. So that's when those, and of course, the stop work order had been rescinded at that time, so he was free to do whatever he chose to do. And he chose to put up another level of blocks, monster blocks, and chose to dump some more dirt on that lot, which all of it puts more weight on the hillside, coming down on top of everybody else. Are there any other questions?
So the original position was that they're in violation of the Yankton County drainage ordinance as well as
Yes.
the public nuisance.
Yes.
Okay.
Before Mr. Desai leaves, I'd like to ask the commission, because I probably missed it, why did Brian rescind the order?
I don't have all the details. He met with Mr. Anthony and
The Nelsons and
Yeah.
Mr. Reinhardt.
the limited knowledge or discussions I had with him was that he did not feel it was necessarily a threat, that it was coming down, and that Mr. Anthony had put the monster block wall up in accordance with the
Manufacturer specs.
manufacturer specs.
So all 5 of us agreed that it was a safety hazard, and Brian McGinnis, the terminated employee, overrode all of us, is that correct?
That would be a fair statement.
No, I wouldn't call that a fair statement.
Wouldn't it? Well, then what would be a fair statement then?
We had limited knowledge. What we directed him to do was to, we felt the information provided was potentially dangerous, and to move forward with the stop order and then investigate if enforcement is needed. So that's what, from my standpoint, I guess, that's how what I,
But he doesn't work here anymore, and we're still here. And he's got the same problem. And it's
he
actually
was
getting worse, isn't
contracted,
it?
Yes.
he
May I
never
offer
did,
a
Gary,
comment?
he was a contract employee for us, so. But go
Did you-
ahead, Mr.
do you-
Desai.
Go ahead.
Yes, if I may. We presented and offered 2 letters from 2 geotechnical engineers, Ralph Linder, Sioux Falls, and Jim Birch of Sioux City, stating that they were very much concerned about the hill being built behind lots 11, 12, and 13. More particularly concerned about the concrete foundation and monster block wall being set at the edge of the hill upon unstable turf, and both stated in their comments as well as writing that it's not an issue of whether the wall will fall, the issue is when it will fall. And so from my professional perspective, I have to give some respect to geotechnical engineers whose job it is to know what they're talking about with respect to the matters that I presented, that we presented to the county commission. And I don't feel I'm taking a pot shot at Mr. McGinnis, but for him to override a decision that the county commission had made with full knowledge, the county commission's full knowledge of those two letters and other evidence, including pictures that had been submitted of what was going on out there, I would state that he overstepped his bounds. He's the servant of the county, and the county commission appointed him to that position. He's accountable to the commission, and not the other way around. And when directed to do an order, my understanding is that the employee always does what the boss says, or quits.
Not always.
Well, he didn't choose to quit, so he was terminated.
I think one thing that bothers me right now is I have never heard from Mr. Anthony. Right now, you've got two geotechnical reports. There's one provided that defends what has been built.
Exception to that.
Okay,
Really
and I'm
doesn't
going to
defend
say
it.
what Gary said a few meetings ago. None of us are engineers sitting here.
Okay.
Certainly not geotechnical engineers. And for any of us to read these reports and pick which one is right, I don't think we have the background to do that.
Okay.
Now, this report does say, and I'll read the concluding opinions, the monster block retaining wall system under construction at the owner's property was being built satisfying the manufacturer's specifications. Number 2, concerns regarding the global stability of soils supporting the retaining wall have not been confirmed. And that's a critical piece of information.
I would agree.
You can look at a building or any structure and you can say, well, it looks good to me, but if it's sitting on poor soil, the best built building is going to fall down.
True.
So that's a critical piece of information for us sitting here to determine and just to say that wall has to go. Now, I did observe in your application to this meeting, number 10, Neil Anthony has breached the Oak Hills Incorporated covenants and agreements. Paragraph number 5, recorded in the office of the Register of Deeds, in that he has erected a fence, barrier, boundary along the east and south sides of Lot 4A in areas reserved for public utilities. So if he has broken a covenant, the county doesn't enforce that covenant, but you should have a homeowners association that can say you built where you shouldn't, you've got to tear it down.
And there is no homeowners association at this point in time. And
Okay.
it hasn't been since prior to 2003.
Okay,
I mean, it can be revived. Those easements and covenants are still on the record. So no doubt about it, they can be enforced if the residents of Oak Hills Addition choose to reestablish, revive an association. But I would also like to add, if I may, there's a June 2003 letter that goes back to Mr. Nelson's issue with Lot 4. And that letter was also written by Ralph Lindner, and I believe you've got a copy of that in there.
yes.
And at that point in time, he had the same concerns, but he did take some soil samples. He, as far as the two architects, well, the three architects that you have letters from, he, above anybody else, had specific knowledge of the soil that's now buried and the stability factor or lack of stability factor of that Lot 4 soil. And his statements can't be disregarded because he was called upon at that time in history to make a judgment call, a professional judgment call on what Mr. Nelson was attempting to do. And Hill would not support, Lot 4 would not support what Mr. Nelson was attempting to do. And now Mr. Anthony has done what Mr. Nelson wasn't allowed to do. And it doesn't make the hill any safer. So far as claiming that he complied with all of the guidelines or outlines or maps or drawings that someone provided, we don't have any evidence of who provided those plans that he purportedly followed. So that's his statement versus, and we don't have any evidence that any engineer was on site to supervise the pouring of the dirt, the packing of it in, the raising of the hill, the pouring of the concrete foundation at the edge of the hill on Lot 4A, or the establishment of the monster block wall on top of the concrete foundation. We don't have any engineer's report saying that that was done according to specs and properly, and therefore it's safe. And safety, safety, safety has been our fire alarm since day one, which, by the way, we've been working on this now in front of not this commission exclusively, but the previous one, since October of 2018. Those hearings have been reset back until finally on December 4th. We did have our actual first hearing last year, 2018, on this matter. So it's been ongoing for a long time. I feel that the commission / the Board of Adjustment has been given very ample information. Mr. Anthony, in order to support its 5-0 vote, Mr. Anthony has had every opportunity to speak. He may be here tonight. He might be given another opportunity to speak. I don't know. But he has, other than perhaps one other time, elected not to speak. If he's got some evidence that's reliable evidence, engineer's report signed with original ink that says that it's safe, well then, so be it. That doesn't mean we agree, but at least he'd be producing something. And that engineer's report from Omaha, Nebraska, because I've got a copy of it, several times in that letter.
I'm going to see if Mr. Anthony, is Mr. Anthony here or anybody? All right, I'm going to.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask one quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. DeSay, to your knowledge, was there a decision rendered by Mr. McGinnis as to the original complaint? Whether he was in violation?
Our original complaint?
Yes, that this is in violation of our drainage ordinance as well as a public nuisance.
No, to the best of my knowledge, no.
Okay.
Mr. McGinnis did not make such a decision.
Okay. He issued a stop work order
To Neil Anthony.
And then upon his review, and this is my understanding, upon his review, he felt that there was no decision saying right or wrong, but he felt that the county was not in the position to issue the stop order. That was my understanding, based off the information given to him, that it was not an imminent threat. And I just want to kind of share that with everybody.
I don't know if that was his place to be a finder of fact. That's the whole function of the county commission, to find facts, not him.
Well, once it's appealed to us, right. But that's why I'm curious if there was, to my knowledge, there was never a decision whether he was in violation or was not in violation of that ordinance.
I may have misinterpreted something, Mr. Healy, but I rather felt that when the commission voted 5-0 to commence the enforcement process, that in essence was a decision.
All right, we're gonna let Mr. Anthony come up and speak for a few minutes on this. Mr.
Thank you for your
Yes. Come on up, sir. Come on up, sir. State your name for the record. And
Neil Anthony, 154 Oak Hills Drive. First of all, this is the fourth time that we've been in this room debating about this. The first time, back on December 4th, Jim got up, spoke for over 40 minutes. I was here. Of course, he said that I wasn't here, didn't have time to show up. The board at that time told him that I had done nothing wrong, which I still haven't done nothing wrong. I didn't need a permit to build this wall. I came in, I talked to Denise, and Pat at that time was told to go ahead and do it. The board told him at December 4th meeting there was nothing that they could do. He came back in at the 18th, same story again. At that time, I got a chance to stand up and talk. The same decision was made. I've done nothing wrong. Now, this August 6th meeting that he came in, I knew nothing about. I was totally blindsided when Brian came out handing me the paperwork to stop and desist, because nobody told me about the meeting. So yeah, I didn't have a chance to come in here and say anything to you. What you heard was his side of the story. That wall has been built over the specifications. There's a 4-foot footing on it. And after the first meeting, I started calling engineers. And everyone I called, he had already called. So they couldn't help me. I did, however, finally get a hold of somebody in the office at the Sioux Falls one. And I said, how do you go about deeming that a wall is unsafe when you have no clue how it was built or what it even consists of? And he said, well, we can't really do that. He said, we based our finding on what Jim Desai told us. I said, so you say it's not safe because of him telling you that it's built on rubble and all this stuff that he comes up with? And yeah, that's what he said. So I had to go to Omaha to get an engineer up here to look at it. This rubble that he keeps talking about, there was cement blocks and stuff in there. I excavated all that out. I dug it all out. I hauled in dirt, good clay dirt from Iowa, packed it in there with Brenda Packer. And we've got 4-foot footings in there with 206 rebar. There's a gridlock between every row block, tied back into the dirt. I've had the neighbor to the north of me, Jim Herder, does landscaping. He wanted to build it for me in the first place. Kurt Oliver, who also put a wall up that's 5 tall, just the same as mine, spent a week, dump truck after dump truck. I think they hauled 400 loads of dirt up there. Nobody has a problem with that. The biggest problem I've got is he came in here every meeting and told you how Karen Dawson suffered substantial damage because of water, well, because my tile, drainage tile, failed back in September of 2018. My tile never failed. I didn't have the southeast corner of that wall finished, and we got that 5-inch rain. The water came down the hill, as it does with no wall or anything else there, ran over my cement and down in her backyard. Her backyard has already had erosion because of the water that runs down that hill. After that, I went and talked to her, and I told her that I would fix that wall, or I would fix her backyard for her and get it cleaned up because I felt bad about it, even though it really wasn't my fault, because if the wall wouldn't have been there, the water would have still went down. So we went in and dug everything out, put a wall in there, and get it cleaned up for her. The second day we were going to set the wall, and she stopped and said that Jim had called her, and I had to stop working on that. I couldn't be there. And I said, Karen, it's your property. I said, you've got a problem here. It's not Jim's problem. You know, we got to get this taken care of. And we went back and looked at it, and I told her, I said, I've got this dirt dug out. I said, if we don't do something about it and it rains, and next spring, I said, all this mud's going to be in your house. She agreed with me. Yep, go ahead and do it. So before she could get back in the car and leave, Dennis Michaels came down. He proceeded to just basically chew her out, tell her to get the deputies
Hey, come
out
on,
there.
don't be personally attacking people. Tell us.
Well, no, I'm just saying he had
okay.
she was in tears, and she finally said, you better just go. So after the December 18th meeting, myself, my wife, and my lawyer met with her outside, and I told her, I said, Karen, I will put that wall up and get it done, cleaned up for you next spring. So we had rains, she had a muddy mess. We went in there on a Wednesday, cleaned everything out, dug out all along the house, dug the trench back, cleaned out around the air conditioner, put the wall up. On Friday, I received a letter from Jim's lawyer, dated Tuesday, the day before we did it, that now he was representing Karen, and I was to cease and desist doing any work on her property. And I received a letter on Friday. Can Jim DeSay see the future? I don't think so, but he has a good way of going back to the past and trying to change it to however it looks good for him. Most of the stuff that he's told you is not true at all. And in the last 3 meetings, or the 2 meetings in December with the previous board, nothing was done wrong. So I really don't see how you can make any decision different than that. So, any questions?
Any questions from anyone on the board?
Yeah. I don't want to talk about your monster blocks or your gravel or your construction or anything. I want to know about your soil. What type of soil is on your lot? Is it Class A, B, or C?
I couldn't tell you that. I know that soil that the wall is built on is all good Iowa clay.
No, I didn't ask that. I asked, is it Class A, B, or C?
Well, the soil that's on the lot.
If you look it up, I used to work construction. There's 3 classes of soil, and the difference is that how they hold together. And a virgin soil that is completely virgin is way different than a soil that's been worked. And you can look it up for yourself, but you don't know what your soil is then.
Well, the soil on the west side of the wall is assortment.
Yeah. So it's not a virgin soil. So it's not a strong soil that's never been worked on or worked. That's what I'm getting at.
Well,
I don't care about all your monster blocks and everything.
But that's what I'm saying. I dug all that out, the stuff that had been dumped in there, dug it all out down to good soil again, plus built it up and packed it with good Iowa clay dirt.
And
you can pull that wall out of there right now, and that hill's not going to move.
And you had an engineer do all the monitoring of that work then? Or?
We went according to engineer specs, yes.
No, I asked you, did you have an engineer on site?
No, I did not have an engineer on site.
Okay.
Anyone else?
But I had an engineer come while it was being built and go through everything and check on it. And that was the one from Omaha.
But you don't know what class of soil is?
Not the whole lot. Like I say, it's varied.
Any questions from anyone else
Mr.
on the board?
Anthony.
Go ahead, Joe.
When you came in and talked to Denise and Mr. Garrity, whether you needed a permit or not, can you kind of go through that conversation or what the scope of the project was at the time?
Yeah, I just came in and told them that I had been looking at it. I thought I was going to build a retaining wall around my property to get that lower lot has basically been just a dumping ground. It was uneven. I wanted to get it leveled out, and my plan is to get it seeded down with nice grass and sprinkler system put in there and keep it looking nice. And I came in, asked them what I needed to do, and they said, you don't need any permit. And I said, well, I'm going to build a big wall. I said, I'm building a monster block wall. I said, it's going to be a big one. They said, you don't need a permit to build a retaining wall. I said, okay. And like I said, we went through 2 meetings in December with the board, and your county attorney even said, there is nothing that I did wrong.
Did you discuss the height or number of blocks or that?
It was going to be 5 high. And it's always been 5 high. The wall's done.
Right.
I know Jim came in here and told you that I was building it 10 block high the very first meeting, and he knew that for a fact. I don't know who told him that, but it's never been, you can't build one over 5 high unless you step back 3 feet and go up again.
And this is right on the lot line, my understanding.
Behind Michael's, it's right close to the lot line. Behind DeSay's, it's back up the hill.
Okay. The engineering firm you talked to in Omaha, did they visit or was that just conversations you had with them?
Oh no, they came up and went through everything, looked it all over, went through all the receipts and stuff that we built it with.
Can you provide all the documents that you're talking about there from the?
I think you've got them all. They're all in there.
They're all in there?
Plus, I gave Brian McGinnis copies of loads of dirt and stuff we've hauled in, block and everything else I had up at that point in time.
Any other questions, Mr. Anthony? All right, have you sit down. I'll open it up to public comment. Anyone from the audience care to speak on this? Come on up, sir. State your name for the record, and if you want to give them 3 minutes.
I need to figure out how to run my clock.
My name's Scott Reinhardt. I'm a lawyer from Sioux City. I had the luxury of sitting through a few of these meetings with you folks and with the state's attorney. I was in the attendance with Mr. McGinnis when we had the meeting with him right next door, I think it is. So Mr. McGinnis explained to us that he was instructed by this board to conduct an investigation, that he wasn't instructed to fly blindly at night or to make people's lives difficult. He was instructed to do an investigation. So he did an investigation. He got information and facts from Mr. Desai. He got those reports from Mr. Desai's experts, which, by the way, they've never been on the property, so they wouldn't know, other than perhaps maybe a little trespassing to take a picture. But they've never done any actual testing. If you look at the reports, they're all speculative because they all assume that this monster block is built on rubble because that's what Mr. Desai said, which isn't true at all. And to answer your question, sir, Mr. Anthony went down to virgin soil, then dug in the footings, then poured the 4-foot footings, then started to put up the wall. There's pending litigation here already between Desai's and Anthony's, because at the hearing on the 4th and the 18th, Mr. Desai came in and called Mr. Anthony everything in the book. And I'm not getting into it, I'm just telling you there's litigation. But we talked with Mr. McGinnis. We provided him with this report from the experts of Omaha. And we provided Mr. McGinnis with some text messages from Mrs. Desai that said everything's fine, which is directly contrary to the information she said, which is it's terrible. So at the end of the day, Mr. McGinnis decided that Mr. Desai and his wife were not truthful, that their allegations were not truthful, that they were exaggerated and not truthful. And based upon his investigation, he decided that there's nothing wrong with this wall, it's safe, and this board has no reason to stop a landowner in the state of South Dakota from using his land in whichever way he wants, as long as he doesn't hurt someone. And the last thing I want to say is, applying common sense for just a split second, water runs downhill. And if you can slow water down as it runs downhill, it does less damage. Those are all common facts that none of us can dispute. So Mr. Anthony then is trying to level off this hill, the steep hill, if you've been out there, you know what I'm talking about, and slow that water down, which actually helps everyone, including the folks downhill, which are Dawson, Desai, and Michaels. So if you look at it from an independent standpoint, Mr. Anthony is actually doing them a favor, which is kind of crazy that he's doing them a favor. He's trying to protect their property from further water damage and erosion, and they're complaining. It's just nuts. And they're relying on expert witnesses who've never been out there, who've never tested the soil, who don't know what they're talking about, and who base their entire decision, if you read the reports, on the concept that this monster block wall was built on rubble. Not true.
I got a question for you. You said that you answered my question. So you're telling me that that's a type A soil out there then?
I don't know. I don't know what type A soil is. I can't tell you that. I can tell you that I know.
That's my question, and you said that you answered my question, but you did not.
No, you wanted to know if it could be virgin soil.
No, I said, is it a Class A soil, I asked. Is it a Class A soil?
I don't have Class A in front of me. I can't tell you.
Okay, you're not an engineer either?
No,
then?
sir. I'm a
You
lawyer.
ever done construction?
I have.
Do you? Like what?
It doesn't matter.
Thanks, Gary. I appreciate it. Anyone else care to speak on this subject? Now would be the time. Anyone else care to speak? Going once, going twice. Bring it back to the board. Do we have any more questions we'd like to ask Mr. Desai or Mr. Anthony?
No.
I ain't feeling uncomfortable making any decision tonight without the advice of our counsel.
I would agree.
I guess I'm just going to talk about where I looked today over the last week through the planning ordinance. It's interesting to me that in our planning ordinance, we have a definition for a retaining wall, and that term is never used again in our ordinance. And then there's a section in there that says what needs a permit and what doesn't need a building permit. Bear with me, I've got lots of sticky notes. So building permits are required in the following instances: for any structure or building in which the structure or building is erected, partially erected, moved, added, or structurally altered. So I looked up the definition of structure, and that wasn't very helpful. For any structure or building in which the use for that structure or building is significantly changed, and for any structure or building regardless of cost if additional land or areas required for the improvements to be sited on. So if you're adding to your house, you need a building permit. Exemptions: remodeling, improvements, maintenance, provided such activity does not include structural alterations, Number 2, concrete slabs on grade do not require a building permit. Fences, corrals, and windbreaks pursuant to section 517, which essentially says you can't build it by an intersection. Number 4 is semi-portable ag structures, and then of course the 120 square foot accessory building that you can have and not need a building permit for. So I struggled to make a case for this needing a building permit in our current ordinance. I think we have identified maybe an area that we need to address retaining walls, but we also have to ask ourselves, do we want to go down that path and start policing retaining walls? Because I put up a retaining wall along my house so that I could keep dirt up by my house. Should I have had a building permit? So you really have to ask yourself, the decision we make here will set precedents, so we don't want to make a bad decision. Drainage ordinance. I asked some of the other drainage commissioners in the past, have we ever dealt with what I would consider drainage in a residential area, not city per se, but a residential area? And they said no. We've never policed that type of drainage. We've only really ever dealt with drain tile going in, the discharge of the tile, the effect that discharge has on things. So I know in here we talked about the drainage implications of that, but I did look up some case law as well, and the little training I had for drainage, and there is precedence that you have the right to continue draining property if you're not adding to the flow of that and burdening the downstream landowner. And in this case, and I have not went to the site, but without Mr. Anthony actually adding to water that's going through here, I find it tough to make a case for a drainage violation. And that's just the research, and again, I agree fully with Don. I don't think we're ready to make a decision without council present on this, and then of course by the time we meet again, we'll have a zoning administrator in-house, and certainly we can throw this at him right away. But I would be very curious if the Oak Hills covenants does actually say that, then there might be something there. But again, that's not a county responsibility to enforce that covenants. That is whoever should be homeowners association's authority to do that. So, I mean, and when you read, and I didn't have that before tonight's meeting, but it wasn't just, yeah, that sounds fine. And these folks looked at receipts for materials that were used and such. So it wasn't just a cursory, yeah, that's fine, that's not. I am not a geotechnical engineer, and I certainly, if I walk out and look at that wall, my opinion is no different than any other layman around here. So again, you have to ask ourselves, are we in the position to hire our own geotechnical engineer? And at this point, I would say no. So I'm gonna stop there, and if any other commissioner wants to speak, but I am in agreement. I think we should not make any decisions without our legal counsel present.
May I comment? comment? We got Ms. Lewis.
Yeah, I'll give you 3 minutes.
Okay, ordinance 20,
Come on up here to the microphone. You give him 3 minutes, please.
Ordinance 20 defines structure as anything constructed or erected which requires location on the ground or attached to something having a fixed location on the ground. Among other things, structures include but are not limited to buildings.
Can we keep the
manufactured-
sidebar conversations down, please, Mr. Williams? Thank you.
B, anything manufactured or constructed by humans as opposed to that occurring in nature which is affixed, anchored, or otherwise attached to or below the surface of the ground. Anything manufactured or constructed by humans as opposed to that occurring in nature which is attached to something else having been affixed or anchored or otherwise attached to or below the surface of the ground. So the master block wall is attached to the concrete foundation, which is, so therefore both items are structures pursuant to ordinance 20. Ms. Lowe's talked about the water. Ordinance 7 deals with flood damage and prevention, which defines flooding or floods as follows, quote, the unusual or rapid accumulation of runoff of surface waters from any source. Mudslides, which are approximately caused by flooding as defined in paragraph 2 of this definition and are akin to a river of liquid and flowing mud on the surfaces of normally dry land areas, as when earth is carried by a current of water and deposited along the path of the current. I have to submit that the water that came over the southeast end of Mr. Anthony's construction project was not water just coming down the hill and soaking into the ground as it had been in prior years, but rather it was a torrent of water that dug gullies into the soil behind Karen Dawson's house. I mean, it was a substantial flow of water with force. It just wasn't a natural drainfall coming down on the leaves of the trees and then soaking into the ground naturally as it had in many prior decades. I'd also just like to make one comment about what Mr. Reinhardt had said about how Mr. Anthony, if I'm saying this correctly, had removed all of the soil down to the very lowest soil and then started building it, but there were footings down in that original soil. And Mr. Anthony just said his footings were if I recall right, 4 feet deep. Well, the hill is 15 or 20 feet high. It's impossible that those footings could be down on the so-called virgin soil or whatever grade of soil it is. So I mean, that was a blatant error on its face, a wrong statement.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Ant?
One question. How do they put monster blocks down on the footings?
I don't know that they do. I know that he didn't. He built a concrete foundation on top of his footings. And then the monster blocks.
Are they attached?
I don't know. You'd have to ask Mr. Anthony. I don't know that answer.
See, the word attached seems to me to be a main point of your
Oh, you're talking
argument.
about the definition of structure.
Yes.
Okay.
If they're just sitting on a footing,
fixed,
that's
anchored,
different than
yeah.
attached.
A fixed, anchored, or otherwise attached. Okay, and they say which is attached to something else that's affixed, anchored, or otherwise attached to or below the surface of the ground. So I mean, I see the point you're making. I don't know that every ordinance can cover every situation. Ms. Wilson has already identified that we all don't. But I also believe that there has to be an element of reasonableness. You know, the reasonable man rule. What's reasonable? There's a 10-foot high monster block wall set upon a concrete foundation that is however thick it is at the edge of the hill. Reasonable? Well, causes fear in the minds of people that they or their families might be hurt, I think at least raises a question that merits
Thank you.
diligent consideration. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I guess same sentiment without having the state's attorney to consult. But the way I see this is we've received, under Article 23, we've received violation, complaint, penalties, and remedies. So we've received a request for enforcement. And we initially authorized Mr. McGinnis to put a stop order on because of potential for imminent threat, imminent safety. And his investigation showed that he didn't feel that it was. But I still think we're waiting for the decision. We're in the first paragraph of section 23. We're still in 2301. And it's unfortunate that it's taken some time to get a decision, and this isn't the only one waiting out there for some decisions, but I think we're to that stage. We need to make that decision, and then whether either party does not agree with that decision, then they can appeal this to this board, but I don't think we're there yet.
Mr. Anthony, I gave him 3 minutes. Did you have anything you'd like to say in 3 minutes? Trying to make it fair, give you equal time.
Well, I'd just like to say, he claims that when the rain came, the water came down with such force that it eroded behind her house. That erosion has been there for years. Sandy Desai, I even pointed that out to her before I ever started building the wall, how that had been eroded. There's actually 2 trees there, they might even be in some of your pictures, that there's nothing holding those trees in. And I have been trying to get, and I told Karen I would take those down for her for free because they're gonna fall in the house. But I had the cease and desist order, so I can't even talk to her right now. But that erosion problem was there long before I ever started building the wall. Yes, some water ran over the hill, but I went down and I took care of it. Much to, if you look back on the minutes of these meetings, he's told you that she suffered all this damage and nobody was there to help her. I went, I helped her. I've actually spent $7,000 on that wall down behind her house, getting her stuff cleaned up. I didn't have to do that. I'm trying to be a good neighbor up there and help my neighbors out. So.
Thank you. Back to the board. I see where you're at. I see what you're thinking, Joe.
I guess to reiterate, I don't think it's our position to determine if this wall is stable, structurally sound, anything. We're here, when it gets to it, to decide if they're in violation of our ordinance. And
So
that we need to narrow our scope.
Okay. What would you propose? Have the zoning administrator render a decision?
I think that has to be done.
Don, what's your thoughts?
That and Rob,
Yeah.
That's Rob's okay on it, in whatever direction we go.
I would agree. Gary, do you have anything like to add?
Everybody says, well, wait for Rob, wait for Rob. Aren't there 2 assistant state's attorneys or deputy state's attorneys? We had one here one day. His name is Yankton, and then he was here that one time, and I think once before, and he's the one that gave us the bad information that we ended up violating the open meeting laws with. So where are those 2 guys at?
I requested that Eric Yankton come here tonight. He said he had a conflict of interest because he lives by Oak Hills. So.
Yeah, well, that should be transparent. People should know about that too.
Yep.
I'm glad I brought it up. But there's still another one besides Yankton, right? We're paying these guys $70,000, $80,000 a year and they don't show up.
I guess I would agree that we should.
Who puts them in position?
They're elected.
Well, that's what that's what
Yeah, we can't fire them.
Yeah.
But they can resign if they want to, if they can't show up for work.
So what were you thinking, Joe, to just, would you want to do a continuance, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, I guess from my standpoint, I don't know that we can make a decision on anything, but I mean, I agree. I think we need guidance from our state's attorney.
So what does the board feel we should do? Continuance till the next meeting? What's the date on the next meeting? Do you have that?
November 5th, I think.
So the consensus, do a continuance and for the November 5th meeting? Or what do you feel, Joe?
I don't feel there's anything to appeal, because there hasn't been a decision made.
But the question is, who's going to make the first decision? And are we going to put that on our new planning administrator's plate, or are we going to do it? So he starts Monday, correct?
I was trying to avoid having him walk in the office day one with a list of these complaints, and that's why we, at the last meeting, had planning and zoning as a temporary administrator, essentially.
I think that a lot of this investigation has been done, which, you know, he certainly was probably gonna follow up, but did you have something?
Well, I guess I would like to know from Rob, can we make that decision?
That's exactly what I was going to ask, because according to that, if we make the decision, we are also the Board of Appeal. And that seems kind of hokey to make a decision and then someone appeals right back to the same board. So I think that's kind of a contradiction with the situation we're in.
That's how we ended up with planning and zoning at the last time, and so.
Yep, exactly, because when we hear complaints for the first time, then they don't have another out to appeal that. So we have 3 weeks to the next meeting, right? It's not a 2 weeks, so I don't know if our new planning, and he'll be here 2 weeks is all, and that's, for him to get fluent on our planning book and our drainage book and all these other, the nuisance and all of that.
Well, besides that, Rob's been involved in this thing for over a year, and.
Yep.
Yeah.
He should be able to give us a decision and then appeal to us.
Yeah.
On November 5th, or the following meeting.
I got a question for the chairman. When we told Brian McGinnis to put the order in for the stop, did he contact you, Mr. Clemish, Mr. Chairman, before he rescinded the order?
No.
He didn't?
No.
He contacted me, Gary.
Well, I think that'd be just common courtesy.
Well, so what's...
You override 5 people and then you just don't say anything to anybody.
So at this point, who is talking to Attorney Clemish to make sure he renders a decision?
Well, I think it has to, if we're gonna follow section 23, we first need a decision. I think we have our, the new zoning administrator and the state's attorney work together and render a decision on this. And from that decision, if there's somebody who doesn't agree with that, then the procedure is that they appeal that decision to the Board of Adjustment. And I think that's how that should go, since we don't have as far as I know, we don't have an official decision by the zoning administrator yet, do we? I mean, has he stated he's in compliance, he's not in compliance? Is that?
Not to my knowledge. To my knowledge, he simply lifted the stop order.
Okay, so back to my original question, who is going to make sure that gets done?
Joe.
I will.
Because
I'll be
we
working with
can't leave it
Gary.
hanging anymore. We have to have responsibility.
Test, Joe, will you sit down with the new zoning administrator and have us a decision within the next, can you do a week on this?
So I'd like to add something else, just for discussion here, to see if we could get a gentleman's agreement between the two parties that no further construction will take place on the wall until 1st to 15th of December. That gives us a month.
Well, I think he said, didn't you say construction's
the wall
completed?
was done.
So
So nothing more will be done on the wall.
I've got dirt work finished, but I probably.
Well, that's what I'm talking about, nothing.
You need to get up to the speaker because the people can't, on the TV that are gonna watch this, can't hear what you just said.
that's fine.
Mr. Anthony said the wall was done, he just has some dirt work to finish. Is that okay? Okay.
Well, I'll certainly sit down with Gary and get started on this and
The new zoning administrator.
yeah, and we'll involve Rob and get his take on I think prior to that, I'll contact Rob and see if this board can handle it or if it needs to be administrator. Would probably be step one and we'll move forward. I'm not gonna commit to I guess a strict timeline. Once it's gonna be out of my hands, but I will start that and relay the information.
We should probably, what do you think, make a motion to appoint?
I don't think
You don't think?
No. Because you're not really making a decision on it.
Yeah, I'll be working with.
So you're gonna, why don't you state that one more time, then you're going to get with the new zoning administrator and
Yeah, I
render
think,
a
I mean,
decision
this
on
will be
this?
part of the first week of orientation anyway, of things that we gotta prioritize. This will be part of that.
Good.
Busy week.
Everybody okay with that? Gary, Don?
Yep.
Okay, all right, I guess that's what we'll do. Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, item number 18.
Before you do, I already appealed to the Board of Adjustments for tonight. So now you're gonna have a new zoning administrator appointed, I presume, at some point in time, and he's gonna be ordered to make a decision. And
See-
that decision may well be appealed, so this is rather circuitous, is it not?
And that's what I'm getting at, Mr. Desai. Unfortunately, I don't believe that there's anything to appeal right now. There's been no decision made.
By the zoning administrator.
And if you read Article 23, zoning administrator must make a decision essentially, and we have the authority to appoint zoning administrators, but we have a new zoning administrator starting Monday.
All right, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thank you. All right, next item on the agenda, item number 18, clarification of monitoring wells. Joel Remfer. Is Mr. Remfer here? Welcome.
I have some papers here for you all first. I'll hand out. I want to make a very good school teacher.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. If you look at the first, I guess I'm Joel Remfer. I'm here to hope that you'll consider re-looking at the test wells. And I'm hoping that I can convince you that in my situation, in my barn location, that I'm not in need of a test well or test wells. The first sheets that you have in front of you are a well, a log of a well that is approximately within 500 feet of the barn. And it shows the soil types that are there. It shows that the first 125 feet are a tilt clay, which is actually the perfect
Hey, guys, can we
type of
stop the
material.
sidebar conversations, please? Give Mr. Remfer the respect he deserves. Thank you.
The perfect material for building lagoons. And that's exactly what is underneath the barn, as we have already dug away the dirt. We've already put the concrete down. The concrete has been put into place. and it was nothing but pure clay underneath it. The second set, you can look at the second page on that first set of pages that I gave you, is what shows the different, the well is 576 feet deep. That shows the first 125 feet is till, which is that clay, which is, my dad calls it bentonite clay. It has specks of bentonite in it, and it's a tight, very, very tight clay. And after looking into this, we knew there was clay under there, we knew it was tight, but we didn't realize how deep it actually was. And after going through this whole process, realizing how deep it is in that area, it makes a lot of sense as to our drainage issues in that area. The second set of papers, the last page is this. I apologize, it's supposed to be in color. My printer was not working correctly, it would not print in color, and my tech savvy is just enough to make it frustrating. So, this page here is just a blown up version of this to focus and pinpoint on the, right here is where the barn is located in this intersection here. And this is showing the first occurrence of aquifer materials in Yankton County, South Dakota. And so it's telling us how deep the first aquifer is. And it is showing it to be over at least 100 feet deep there. And as you can see with the well that was dug, and this was dug back in '67 or so, my dad, in fact, he remembers helping the man dig it. And there was a camera put down the well at that time when it was dug to log what soils were there by, I think, the University of USD or something along those lines from his memory. And he was 17 years old at the time, so this is, he was quite fascinated with it all, and so he remembers all this. But anyways, aside from that, this map here shows this spot here is where this deep clay is, and I guess my request from you is to lift the for lack of a better word, demand of test wells, because I feel that there is no good reason to have test wells. There's no chance of, I have a double barrier. I have first I have a concrete barrier to hold the manure, and secondly I have this 125-foot deep clay bed to hold this manure from contaminating anything, from contaminating any aquifer. I've also talked with individuals who specialize in DENR regulations and dealing with that. If I was under, say I was over 1,000 animal unit operation, and I was underneath DENR regulations, to determine whether or not I would need a test well, they would first do a boring and to see what soils I have to see if I need a test well. And according to what I all have here, there would be no reason to have a test well. But there's something else. Yeah, and then also the engineer that I spoke with an engineer, and typically they put a test well 20 to 25 feet deep. And in his, from the maps that I showed you and the well that was drilled, and what was shown there, in his mind, there would be nothing but a dry hole. There would never be water in it because it's pure clay, well beyond that 20 to 25 feet.
Who was the engineer, Joel? Do you remember his name?
Todd Van Manen. He works here in Yankton.
Is he your engineer for your barn?
No. He was just an individual that was very kind enough to offer his knowledge to me.
Yeah, I think he actually works on quite a few swine barns, does he not?
Yes, I believe so. This is not his first rodeo.
Sure.
Yep. he seemed to be quite knowledgeable in that area. Just trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to mention. Yeah, you know, the soil that is underneath there, once again, is an excellent, is exactly what they would use to build lagoons, if you would build a lagoon for holding containment. Yeah, I guess that's what I have for right now. I don't know if you have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Renford? All right, I'll go ahead and open it up for public comment. Anybody from the public care to speak on this, either for or against? Now is the time to do so. Come on up, sir. I'll state your name and give you 3 minutes. Welcome.
Louis Johnson, Ballin, South Dakota. We have a building that's identical basically to the one that he's putting up. The soil type that he's on, it doesn't get much tighter. And if you were worried about groundwater pollution, I'd be more worried about Riverside Acres, the White Crane area down there, that's all on sand. And all of that stuff just goes down and it's in the aquifer right away, because it's basically the depth of the river. And I personally think it's just another added expense that at the end of 10 years, it's gonna be, it's no different. Now, are you using well water in the barn?
Not currently, no.
Okay. But it's one of those things where what good does it do a producer to ruin his own water? And I think you have to give us a lot more credit than what people have been giving us in the fact that my barn, it's not for me. Hell, I'll be dead before it's paid for. It's for my son and my grandchildren. It's called planning for the future. And I think we'd better start doing that, and instead of making things as damn difficult as we can, we work with people. I guess I don't know of any major spill because we don't have lagoons, and the lagoons we have, like the one for the dump station out by the lake, does anybody monitor that to see if that leaks? I don't think so. But I don't think that the monitor wells are at all necessary because of the soil type that he has. Thank you.
I got a question for you, Mr. Johnson. You said that down there by, I got a question for you. You want to go back up there?
I can't hear, but.
Oh, okay. Well, join the crowd. Anyway, you said that like Riverside Acres and White Crane, you know, that's sandy and everything goes down there. Just one question, are there any hog barn CAFOs out there?
No.
No.
How many gallons of water, how many pounds of medication are taken by the people out there?
That's all I want to know, if there was any hog CAFOs out there.
Yeah.
And you said no.
Thank you. Anybody else care to speak? Come on up, sir. State your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes. Welcome.
Ray Up, Mission Hill, South Dakota. I'm the owner-operator of a CAFO 2,400 head unit for 21 years now. My father-in-law put in an irrigation system a quarter-mile from the house, and they hit water at 60 feet. So our water table is at 60 feet. In 2018, my neighbors, they use well water out of that aquifer, and they pulled a sample and sent it to Midwest Labs down in Omaha, I think they are, and nitrate levels are normal. So I've been incorporating manure for 21 years, and it has had no effect on the aquifer at 60 feet. This gentleman's is deeper than that. It seems like encumbrance for a young man who has dreams and aspirations of farming the rest of his life to add an unnecessary expense onto his profitability factor. The other barn on my farm has been there for 40 years, and the pit's full again. So the aspect that these concrete vaults leak after a few years and contaminate water really needs to be considered greater than it has been. These vaults are built sound, and if he has that dadgum much clay under him, I wish he'd bring it over to my place so my ground won't be so damn soggy. So please reconsider another encumbrance on a young man who wants to see a future in farming.
Thank you. I have a question for you, sir. If one of these pits are leaking, how would you ever know? I mean, if you're not testing, how do you know if it's leaking or not into the groundwater?
Because it keeps getting full.
Because it keeps, okay. All right, thank you. Anybody else care to speak on this topic? Now would be the time to do so. This is public comment, so if somebody wants to speak, let them know, you can come back up. Anybody else care to speak on this topic? Come on up, sir. Welcome. State your name for the record, and we'll give you 3 minutes.
Glenn Muller, Executive Director, South Dakota Pork Producers Council. And I guess I just want to reiterate what Mr. Epp said, that it's difficult for us to get the next generation involved in the industry. And I appreciate all the diligence that this board has taken to make sure that these barns are safe and sound. And we've done all of our efforts to try and give you that assurance that they are. I can assure you, I've spoke with Mr. Van Manen, Todd as well, and he's very comfortable that these test wells are not going to give you any indication of what you're looking for. This is a safe barn. It's setting on a clay base that's completely safe, and we would build lagoons out of this, which we no longer utilize. This structure has been built under engineering specs with re-rod and is contained, and that's the least of your concerns, that there will be a leakage in this barn. Were it to fall under DENR, DENR would not ask for test wells in this one. You have to remember, this barn is only about 24% the size of a DENR. So it's a very small barn by comparison. 240 animal units in regards to 1,000 animal units is where DENR regulations kick in. I would recommend that you allow this young man to build this without that obligation, the additional cost. It's an extreme risk that these young folks are taking, a debt obligation, and it's going to add substantial cost to the construction, as well as the maintenance and the annual testing is additional cost for him as well. And we need to do everything we can to let these young folks get started. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Glenn Muller.
Glenn Muller, and you're with the South Dakota what?
Pork producers.
Pork producer. Do you live here in Yankton County?
No, I do not. I represent the producers across the state.
Okay. Where do you live at?
In Turner County.
Okay.
Sir, would there be any situations where your organization would recommend groundwater monitoring?
Absolutely.
Could you give me an example?
Basically, what we look at is if you've got the light sandy soil, we'd ask for a monitoring, and the DENR would ask for a monitoring both upstream and downstream to see if there's any variation.
Of the groundwater or what?
Or that'd be the aquifer as well. And in this case, I think, I have not seen the maps, but I've been told by Mr. Van Manen that it's 150 plus feet to the aquifer. And so we would recommend that, yes. And we're very concerned about the environment, and we want to do due diligence in these cases. But in this case, I don't think you're going to find anything. Plus the monitoring and policing of this, who's going to be the enforcement to make sure that this testing is done and done appropriately to get the results that we're all looking for. And we feel very comfortable that this will be a safe facility.
Sure. Have you recommended any water monitoring in any of the other facilities coming into Yankton? I mean, we do have some right over top of aquifers. And as far as I'm concerned, your organization didn't recommend.
How many of the barns that you've approved have a
That I've
DENR
approved or the
that
Yankton?
The board has approved have a DENR permit
I am
attached.
not sure of that, but there are several.
Though DENR would make that recommendation if there were a need and they felt that there was a need based on the soil type.
But that's only for a facility that's DENR, like you said, over 2,500. So if it's not DENR requirement, DENR is not going to get involved even if it was needed.
Right. They're not gonna get
So-
involved in this case because it's too small.
Sure. Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Mueller? Thank you, sir. Anybody else care to speak on this topic? Now would be the time to do so. Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Did you have something else you'd like
Yeah,
to?
just a couple quick comments.
Sure.
I'm not trying to just get out of this just to, not do due diligence, but the main thing for me is the cost. I have a family of 7, I have 7 children, and if you haven't noticed, agriculture hasn't been overly profitable lately, and that's why I'm going into this venture. This is something that I want to pass down to my children. Definitely do not want it to leak. I do not want it to contaminate my property, and in no way do I ever expect it to. And in my mind, I don't ever see how it could ever get to the aquifer. It would be almost impossible. Unless an earthquake happened and somehow opened it up. I don't know, but, so I just want to let you know that it's not that I don't want to protect the aquifer and I don't want to protect the environment. It's the fact that it's going to cost me around $6,000 to put these test wells in the first place, and then every time I test after that, it's going to be approximately $600 every time for the testing, and it's money, and I don't have much of it, so. I thought there was something else I wanted to mention, but not thinking of it now, so I think that's it, so thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I got a comment. I think the reason we approach test wells, and we've talked about other things like the fans on the end that clean the smell out, trees and all those kind of things, is to set up a standard across the county that can be applied equally. Now, your soil is apparently outstanding by what you show us, and I believe that to be so, and I believe that you are correct in saying it wouldn't be any damage. But the other side of the issue, they need some concurrence that we're not just accepting everybody's testimony that they're safe, and that's the reason for the test wells, in my opinion.
Can I comment? And I fully agree. And that's where this map here that I've shown you, and I can show it to you on my phone, a colored version of it, showing that perhaps, and this just in my mind, just an option, and maybe this isn't a very viable option, but if you just simply go off of this map here, it kind of shows you if they're placing a barn in soil that would be questionable, maybe perhaps that would be something you could have them have a test boring done to find out what soil is underneath them, to see if it needs a test well. You know,
Well, Joe, when you come in for a conditional use permit, okay, we make that decision, and we can't say, well, would you want to come in and us to have you do soil borings and all these other criteria and then come back and do a conditional use permit? Because at the end of that, we either approve, disapprove, or add with conditions.
Sure, okay.
Okay, so that's our decision, so,
Yeah.
I don't know how much a soil boring is, but from what I've heard, it's fairly expensive.
Well,
It's probably
that's
more
why-
expensive than a
that's
well.
why I mentioned by going off of this map, and if it's in a location that looks questionable, then maybe that's something you could implement. I don't know, that's just off of the.
And this is
I'm just
also a map
talking.
that-
I'm not
you know, from what the engineer says, this is the best guess. How do you know if there's actually an aquifer there? You do a boring and you hit an aquifer and you know it's there.
Yeah.
But you could go
But
20
this-
feet and it could not be
Yeah.
there either.
But this gives you at least some idea of where
Sure.
you're at.
Sure.
And that's just,
Yeah, I would
just
agree.
me just talking, so don't take too much.
Yeah. No, we
Too much
trust,
credit.
and, you know, I feel the board, we work with you. I mean, there was talk about having 4, but we didn't want to burden you. We compromised on 2, and then normally they do these, I believe, every year. I think you're every year, and then for a while it's every other year. Is that?
Every, first 2 years every year, and then
Yeah.
every other year after that, yeah.
So, I mean, it certainly could have been every year, and it wasn't. So, I mean, I feel we did work with you on this.
But
No, I'm not
I hear
saying
what
you
he's
didn't.
saying too.
I understand.
If we have a strong indication that there's clay, you know, 300 feet down from some geological survey, we should be able to write in our ordinance when you would require monitoring wells.
I
And
guess,
of course,
I mean,
it
if-
isn't just from leakage. It can also be from field application, can't it?
As far as contamination,
Yes.
I suppose, I don't.
Well, you'd have
If
to-
it's applied correctly, I wouldn't think it
So
should.
then you have to kind of look at all the land that is in the 5-mile
Yeah.
radius of your farm that you might
Might
be
apply
putting
it on,
on.
but if it's applied correctly, it shouldn't be an issue if it's not over applied.
Actually,
In my
it'd be
mind.
safer to have some test wells. Say you've got a neighbor that builds something, you know, I don't know, some kind of a chemical plant or something. I'm just gonna give an example. And then all of a sudden, your test well shows nitric acid in your well. You'd be protecting yourself along with your other neighbors too. So it would be an advantage for everybody that you had test wells.
Perhaps, but in my situation, I'm almost positive it'll just be pure clay, and nothing will be able to permeate, nothing will be there to even extract.
So I just want to clarify the costs. So you said 6,000, so that's 3,000 per
Approximately.
well.
Yeah,
About.
approximately, yep.
And you said 600 per year to test, so that's for 2 tests, so 300 per test?
Yes.
Who are you going with? What?
I have not, that's just approximate from the engineer, he had given me
When I
approximate.
talked to Dakota Environmental, they'll do 2 of those tests for $300. That was earlier this year when I
So
spoke with them in
150
here.
a test?
That's what they
Okay.
told me.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
So-
that was just from the engineer,
Sure,
had mentioned that's kind of approximate, you know.
You know, so I think Joel's bringing up a very good point that using something like this as a guideline for when testing is certainly absolutely required versus not required at all is wise. I think that in the future, when we hear one of these applications, we need to be looking at the map and seeing what the risk factor is. So in this instance, though, sometimes gathering data also disproves what people suspect. So if we do a test well and we don't find anything, in the future, we know it's a safe place to build. We have the data, so someone can't just say, well, you're assuming. We have the data to dispute the claim they're making. So I guess what I would propose here, I would be fine just doing 1 test well. And I think the county maybe could help you out with that test well, because we are receiving tax dollars back from the state, and we're estimating about 12,000. And as maybe the county needs to step forward, and since we are requiring this as research to prove that we are doing the right thing, we could all win a little bit. The county could give up some of our free money. We could get the data that we need, that we want, and everything gets done. And then you're not out there doing something you feel there is no benefit because of this map. But the next part that comes through that is on a soil that could be a question, maybe we have 2 wells at that site and the county gives a little on that project as well, as long as we still have this tax rebate still in, because I just think it's the right thing to do to gather the data. And since the county is benefiting from your project and we're asking you to do something extra, maybe we should help you out. Now, I don't know what the rest of the board feels about that, but this way we follow through with our intent to start this as a precedence. But you're not out $6,000 in your mind that you feel is not worth it.
That's the main thing. And can I be completely honest? I don't think it would be a benefit to you in the sense that you're gonna find anything, but I guess if it's.
But don't discount not finding anything.
Okay.
That's a benefit too.
Yep,
That is a benefit to
find out
your barn if we don't
in my
find anything.
situation, there is nothing to be found, so I guess, I mean, yeah, you guys are free to.
I'll throw another little sidebar in that you're gonna save a lot of money on the lawsuits.
If something would happen.
Yeah,
Or if any question comes up.
Yep, you can say I've tested and I have a baseline and it goes a long way.
So there's a whole litany of things that we need to address. One of them, I want to just back everything up to how we got here, and just, so this kind of started, I don't know, Joel, if you contacted Brian or Mr. Cosbooth contacted Brian, but anyway, this started with a clarification of what exactly we want them to test. And that's kind of where it started. And I've had a couple conversations, actually Mr. Cosbooth called me at about 4 o'clock today and just asked if there was anything material needed or whatever. And I had said that our last conversation, I told you that, you know, we need to have the conversation here, but that to get in front of the board and whatnot. And so there were several options discussed. And, you know, one was simply clarifying what to test. One was, you know, doing soil borings to see if it's warranted or not. I believe you have a tile around the perimeter. So that's kind of where this, how it got here anyway. And I'd kind of expressed that you know, if looking at soil conditions, I mean, if it does not make sense at all to do test wells, you know, there may be options such as the soil borings or I don't know where you're at on the drain field tile.
There's one in there.
If that's an option too, there's tile that runs around the perimeter of the barn along the base, if that would be suitable to sample out of. I don't know if there was a leak, if it, you know, how it gets to it or whatnot, but I just wanted to get that information out there, that's kind of where all this came from. I think to your point, Don, we do need to probably look at these maps and look at siting much better going forward, and that's the plan, I guess, as far as I'm concerned. And one thing about this map in particular is I'm confident where you're at, that's clay, and probably nothing but we do not know if there's a gravel vein or something that would run through there.
And when I dug, there was no.
And and so
I guess, and that's you taking my word for it, but hopefully.
Well, and just back to, I mean, this is a starting point, but I think, you know, rather than test wells being the standard on everything, maybe we do soil borings and maybe we put some test wells in on the county dollar.
You guys are talking about the county now paying for the conditions of these conditional use permits?
I
That's
think
a
we
slippery slope.
need to be very careful about
the county's broke. I just, you know, we had a conditional use permit, we had a hearing. These are the conditions that we all agreed to. You know, we had a vote of 4 out of 5, and now we're trying to change what we agreed to. I mean, if we wanted to do soil borings and this and that should have been done beforehand. But these are the conditions that we agreed to and it passed. And now we're going back and saying we don't like, I mean.
And I don't disagree with that.
You know, the trees that we had, that's a requirement. We put trees. How do those trees help him? They don't, the trees are an expense. They're not gonna help him either. Or is the county gonna start paying for trees?
Well, to that effect, I'll say whatever happens here in the future, I can get behind using some of those dollars for, call it projects or research or something that's gonna benefit the community as a whole. But you're right, it's a slippery slope. We need to be cautious not to,
Well, it's $11,000.
Something that should be
I mean, if
paid.
we're gonna test that, if it is $500 a year, in 20 years it's gone, and now it's actually costing the county money, we probably won't be here. I mean, that was an agreement that this board and Mr. Remford had, is if you do this, we'll pass it, and
right.
we all agreed, and now we're trying to change the rules.
And that's the final point, I guess, that I want to make is, and I guess when the last I talked to you and told you to come up here, I think we can, but I know where there's litigation right now about modifying CUPs, and our state's attorney's not here to give us a really.
Can you explain, what do you mean by that?
Well, okay, so you came before us, we granted a conditional use permit with these conditions.
Yep.
To come back and have anything changed.
Mm-hmm, okay.
And that's kind of where I told you, I think as long as we follow the right channels, where, you know, I think as long as notifications and the hearings happen, I think we're okay, but I would like, before taking action, I would like,
An attorney here.
yeah.
Okay.
But I think we still need to have this discussion.
I'd just like to say something that this free money that Commissioner Lowe's talks about is real great, but when that dries up and then we start paying for the test wells, then what's going to happen? Our county's broke already, you know, and then you set another dangerous precedence.
Well,
You allow,
I'm broke, too.
wait a minute, you allow people like you to come back in here and renegotiate after you've already been approved. So we set another dangerous precedent. So pretty soon everybody's going to come in after, if we do this, and all these other CAFO owners, well, hey, if he can do it, I can come back in here and renegotiate my deal too. And I want some free wells too, just like he got. I don't think this is the time to be doling out free money. Even if I don't know how long your free money is going to last. You know, we've got 2 floods and we still got a winter to go through. Maybe next year will be worse, you know. I don't like this giving out free money that might dry up or might not, but to set a precedence to start paying for the stuff, you're getting way in dangerous territory.
Thanks, Gary. Was there, did you have anything else that you wanted to add, or were you gonna make a motion or something, Joe, or did you wanna go to the next meeting, or what were you talking about?
Well, I mean, I think we can still have the discussion here. I don't know, and I apologize, because I told you to get out, you know, go through the Board of Adjustment. It goes back to modifying the CUP without a state's attorney or somebody to offer some insight on that. I don't know that we can officially move forward.
I guess my biggest concern is, at the time when you had put that out there for me to do, I didn't know anything about it, or I didn't know any information on it. I didn't know how it all worked, how it was applied in the industry, how it's been applied in, you know, DENR, how they approach it. If they're approaching it in a certain way with over 1,000 animal units, why is it thrown on to me in a much smaller unit in a much stronger and harder way. I mean, I've shown you as best as I can that I have the perfect soil to put the barn on. That in my mind, there is no way we could ever possibly have a leak that would reach the aquifer. There is no possible way that that could happen in my mind. And the biggest thing is, it's a big cost on my end. And money is money, and that's why I'm doing this in the first place. So it's for me and my family, and the hope of passing it down to my children at some point in time, allowing them to be able to, hopefully, one of them farm, I don't know, if they so choose.
Sure. Well, do you realize that there are some people in the community that may have concerns about it? And your situation and your location is different than other areas. And, you know, it is a cost, yeah, but if it can prevent, you know, groundwater contamination or identify a problem that you have earlier, you know, is that such a bad thing? You know, the trees are another example. You know, we required trees as something. Those trees probably aren't, you know, doing a lot for you, given the option. You might not plant trees. That was a condition that we placed on this, and we also placed the manure setback. Is that gonna be a burden to you? Yes, because you're gonna have, what did we say, 50 feet on each side of the stream?
Look again.
Whatever, I mean, yeah, that is another burden that is placed on you. But those are the conditions that, you know, this board decided that these are the rules that if we're gonna permit that's what you need to follow, and, you know, I guess we all agreed on that.
It's just that the trees aren't near the cost of what.
They're trees have gone up, they're pretty expensive nowadays, but.
They have some
yeah.
cost, but they also have a benefit to me
Sure,
too.
sure.
They do, because they're gonna protect my building.
Sure.
They're gonna be aesthetically pleasing to me.
Sure.
But that aside, I don't understand why we are putting more precedence in this county, a higher precedence, higher than they would with over 1,000 animal units. If I put a 10,000 animal unit in there, and the DENR was in charge of me, they would pop a test hole in, find out that, assumingly find out that there's that clay base, and they would not require a test well. I guess I'm just hoping we can think through this logically and understand this. So
I'm gonna say that this was from Mr. Cosbooth out of his mouth, not mine. There's a large distrust of DENR and their requirements, and that's what drives some of this. I think there's quite a large faction of people that feel DENR says they're testing for things, or maybe that they're really not looking out for the water quality and the environment like they say they're supposed to. I'm not saying they do, I'm not saying they don't, but that's perception. And so that's some of why this is happening, I guess, the discussions.
Sure.
Well, what did you want to do then, Joe? Did you want to make a motion? Do we want to postpone this?
Well, I think for starters, since we're probably not going to take any official action, I think we need to identify, if this goes nowhere, clarify what we're testing for and where the wells go.
Yeah. Well, I got this, I think you guys all have it, from Jay Gilbertson from East Dakota. And Paul Kosbach had that. You guys should all have one. He said what the state tests for in contaminants is they test for dissolved solids, sulfate, nitrate, ammonia, and chloride, all reported in milligrams per liter. And they also record the water table elevations of the wells. And I think if we, regardless of what we do decide, if we do decide that he's going to do the testing, I think we should adhere to the standards of the state.
And then the well would be one up gradient, one down gradient.
One up gradient and down gradient, yeah, for two.
If we,
I think that's standard practice with the state from what Mr. Gilbertson has stated.
where's your barn at in the process?
All the main concrete is finished.
Okay.
That's all that's been done.
Do you have a finish date outlined?
I'd say that
A finish date outline or when you would like to populate?
whenever they can do it. I'm at the mercy of the contractors.
Sure.
But irregardless, none of this really is stopping my construction of
Right.
of the building.
Correct.
I'm just clarifying that.
Yep.
Well, I guess I can say that, I'm of the opinion that we had conditions, we all agreed to them. As far as I'm concerned, that's what I voted on, and to come back and now, and this is no offense to you, want to take off conditions that we don't like, that is precedent setting. Or if we do a road maintenance agreement for a gravel pit and they don't like that in a couple of years, are they going to come back? It's a slippery slope. This is what we agreed on at the time for this, and I think we need to stay the course with this. So,
I'd have to agree with you, Mr. Chairman, because
on a, what is this, how many hundreds of thousands of dollars a facility is this?
About 450.
Okay. And I know it's a few, $6,000 is still a lot of money, but compared to the overall amount, it's not a huge amount. It's not 20, 30, 40%. It is a big amount, but.
I guess one other thing I want to say, and don't take offense at this. I was on federal grand jury duty for 18 months in Pierre, Rapid City, and Sioux Falls, and I remember one person said, well, I didn't know that law, and I didn't know how that law worked, and I didn't know how that law worked, and I didn't know how that law worked. And you know what the judge said? He said, ignorance of the law is no excuse, unquote. So.
Well,
this doesn't involve anything like that.
No, but it's just an example that,
Yeah.
like I say, you can't keep coming back in here for renegotiation. You're gonna have every careful hog barn renegotiating every deal.
He came in here and made a presentation, and at that presentation, we had 100% approval, I believe, of the Planning and Zoning Board. And we talked for an hour and a half or 2 hours on this case, and we threw a whole bunch of requirements on him that were not in the ordinance, but were good ideas, in my opinion, and he had to make the decision on them on the spot. And yes, he had a month now to think about it, and I'm open-minded enough to say I'll rethink some things.
Well, I'm hoping I brought some information before you that you clearly, you obviously didn't have before, that would hopefully help you in making a more clear and concise decision. That
I can support Sherry's recommendation that we could cost share from the tax dollars a portion, and it'd be a one-time example until we get our planning and zoning rewritten to the point where we can tell them, yeah, you need test wells, or no, you don't.
Because in my understanding, I'm the first one to have this.
Yes.
And so I'm kind of the guinea pig, and so I'm kind of getting, I'm getting the shaft of it all, the way I'm looking at it.
You're learning.
So, it's at my cost, not yours. And so that's it once again comes down to the bottom dollar. It's gonna cost me.
Well, and I'll say, because I got contacted, Brian was asking, how do we want to handle this? And then I picked up conversations and I don't think anyone should see this as Joel was sitting around and thought, I'm gonna get out of this. It was when he started asking questions from, monitoring companies and this, that, and the other thing. What should we be monitoring for? How do we do this? Where do I go? There were questions of, well, is that even necessary? Coming back, the experts were asking him, well, is this necessary? And that's where I said, well, put something together, or what, a proposal, come back in front of us and we'll see. So it wasn't, I just want to say, I don't feel that it was Joel trying to get out of anything.
Sure.
And not to make any offense to anybody or make light of anything, but I don't think you all knew exactly what this all entailed and involved and was what the whole process was. And so, I mean, I'm learning with you, but I also want to do it in a logical way that's not going to cost me a bunch of money just because you guys are learning too. So.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think groundwater is important. We need to, we need to protect it. We need to, but we do need to have a thought process in it too, maybe.
What do you want to do then, revisit this or make a decision?
Any decision, I guess, is going to be.
I think the only decision we can make without Rob is if we're going to help fund
Cost
the
share or
project.
not. Yeah,
That's the only decision, because that has nothing to do with the CUP. Anything to do with changing your CUP, we need advice.
So we just want to do it all together, or you want to?
So I don't think that's a decision we have to make tonight, if everyone wants to consider that.
Time to think on it? So do we want a motion on this or not? Want to table it till the October, or I'm sorry, what is it, November 5th? Or continuance till the November 5th when we have state's attorney guidance?
That's fair.
Sound good to everybody? All right, somebody wants to make that motion.
I don't.
Do we need a motion for that?
Okay.
We'll just
Well, I'll
put it
just
on the
make in the
agenda.
minutes, I'll just put continues to the November 5th meeting.
Okay, get some more information? Is that good for you?
Yep.
Appreciate you coming in. Thank you very much. All right. Entertain a motion to come out of Board of Adjustment.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passed. We're back into regular session. Let's go ahead and take a 5-minute break. Sound good with everybody?
Yeah.
5-minute break? All right. Entertain a motion for 5-minute break.
So moved.
Second.
Second. Motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, 5-minute break, everybody. Back into regular session.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Back in regular session. Next item on the agenda, item number 19, acting zoning administrator wage. I guess I can take this one. I believe it's tradition, isn't it, not Patty, when you have somebody who's filling in as the acting head to give them a, is it $1 per hour raise? And I think if it's tradition, and definitely Jessica has really been putting in the hours and working very, very hard to accomplish many things. So I would think that we should give her $1 an hour per raise for while she's acting zoning administrator, retroactive back to September 1st. And I don't know what the board thinks about this. This isn't something Jessica asked for or anything. It's just, it's tradition. We've done this with a lot of other people before, and so I think that's just a small token that we can say thank you for all you're doing and how hard you're working. So,
Second.
Okay, but did I make a motion?
Wait a second.
I didn't make a motion yet,
I
so.
think we need to put an end date to it too. So,
Why don't we go from September 1st to, why don't we do December 1st, because there's going to be a lot of training. She's going to be assuming a lot of additional duties. We're going to go to November or to the end of the year? Because she's going to be doing a lot of the duties while the other guy is getting up to speed. Okay, I guess I could go
Yeah,
from
that's fine.
retroactive from September forward to, I guess, the end of the year. Do you want to do that?
12/31.
12/31?
Sure.
Okay. And I guess I haven't made a motion yet. What does the board think?
I'd like to ask Jessica, 'cause would that help you stay? We don't lose you after you get all this training in. We've lost enough stuff, enough people.
It's a very kind offer, I appreciate it.
Okay.
Anyone from the audience care to speak on this? Going once, going twice. And I'd just like to say this isn't something Jessica asked for, but it's tradition that we've done it. I believe we did that with Mike Sidlacek and some other people, and it's just a small way we can say, thank you, and we appreciate the hard we're doing. So I guess with that, I will make a motion to increase the deputy zoning director as $1 per hour and pay retroactive to September 1st to the end of the year.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Roll call vote, please.
Flemish,
Yes.
Bunsen,
Yes.
Ketterine,
Yes.
Loest,
yes.
Haley.
Yes.
Motion pass. Next item on the agenda, item number 20, zoning enforcement update. Joe?
I'll take
I'll let
this.
you take that one.
Yeah, I asked to put this on the agenda, and again, thought there would be some more discussion with, I wasn't aware that Rob had prior commitments, so I don't have much of an update off of that. I'll just say that we'll be proceeding in accordance with the ordinance and under the guidance of the state's attorney on the previous enforcement actions, and I think Rob might have more to offer when he's available.
Have him, we'll put that on the agenda for next meeting. I think it'd be wise to have the state's attorney address that. Anybody want, is that a good idea? Do you want to put that on the agenda for next meeting, have the state's attorney address where we're at on that?
Yeah,
Did you have something, Sherry?
Yeah, do we need to clarify the outcome of that Friday meeting?
I think we should probably have the state's attorney do that.
Okay, that's what he's going to do, is
Yes.
clarify that. So no action is being taken out of that meeting at this point. Correct?
I would say not.
Okay.
Right, anything else on that one? All right, 21 is scratched.
I want to just make one comment, Dan.
Yep, go ahead.
It's not really a YAPG's conflict of interest. I think the issue was a conflict of interest on my part over a vote concerning YAPG.
Okay.
So just to clarify, it's not them, it's me.
Okay, and we postponed that when you weren't here last, and we'll have the state's attorney address it. All right, number 22, commercial building permit fee discussion, Mr. Kettering, Commissioner Kettering.
Okay, I think we all got emailed this top 20 valuations for Yankton County. I didn't copy off copies for you, but the top valuation in the county was a commercial building, Dakota Plains Ag, 29 million. Then it goes down to Trans-Canada, Northwestern Public Service, Jamesville, Hutter, Wright County, and Ralph Marquardt, Heine Farms, and Sapa. I just bring that information to to remind you that there are income sources for us. At the meeting that last time I was here, I indicated that I would bring a comparison of the 6 or 7 or 8 counties that I took on a fee comparison for commercial construction projects.
And then based on ours, that would be on a $150 million project, and that's kind of what they were talking about out at Napa Junction. There would be $751,000 of fees. In Lincoln County, the same thing would be $675,000. Minnehaha County, $1,500,000 of fees. Brookings County, $149,000 of fees. Brown County, $447,000 of fees. And Cottington County, which is Watertown, $150,000 of fees. Davison County, $150,000 of fees. Sioux County, Iowa, $375,000 of fees. Union County, South Dakota, $375,000 in fees. So you can see the point that was pointed out to me when I was visiting with officials was that the counties that have infrastructure covering pretty much everything can charge higher fees. They can get by with it because when they're attracting a company or a business, they don't have to worry so much about the fees because they've got the gas, they've got electricity, they got all those things. So I think, and I was the one that made the motion 3 months ago to accept our fee schedule, but I would just like us to consider rethinking that. My proposed commercial fee for Yankton County building permits would be $1.50 per $1,000 contractor bid price. This includes ag value added production building facilities. So if you had $150,000, it'd be $225,000. So on a $150 million project, going from our present structure to the proposal, we would go down by $525,000. But if you go back here and look at the size of the projects, it makes a difference to the producer on fees. So
your main concern is that the fee could possibly scare off some economic growth?
Yeah.
And are you only concerned with commercial, or what did you all want to cover?
Well,
commercial and ag?
you know, I went through commercial, Dan, I went through commercial and did this all up in commercial, and then I said, okay, so our leading sector in the economy is ag. Why wouldn't, how does that differentiate in commercial? If they put up $1 million building or, so I don't see how we can discriminate against ag for commercial or
well, I think it's how it's classified.
Residential the way it
Yeah,
was.
it was, well, it's probably how it's classified, you know, how it's zoned, if it's zoned ag or if it's zoned
Right.
commercial, and that
Absolutely.
affects its taxes. Well, what are your thoughts on, well, I think, you know, originally we agreed that, you know, our fee structure hasn't been touched in, it was, what, 15 years? What about just putting a cap on it? Because, you know, we all want these $150 million buildings coming, but they don't come very often. And, you know, what about putting a cap, and it's just a number, 200, you know, we charge the fee, but our cap is 250,000. So if a big business is, you know, big $150 million projects coming in, then that's their cap, and that really, maybe that would incentivize even bigger projects, you know. most of the ones we deal with are smaller ones.
30, the big one is 30
Yeah.
million.
And, you know, what we were finding out when we were looking at it is just the amount of, you know, the amount of paperwork, at least for the CUPs and all of that, wasn't justifying. This is building permit, this is different, but would you be okay
Oh,
with
yeah.
putting
Yes,
just a
would.
cap of
Absolutely.
some amount on there? I
You'd
don't
have
know.
to stair step it down on, you know, I think you'd want to stair step it.
A cap,
Not necessarily the 250, but
sure.
from some number, because if you come in at 100 million and you had to pay 250,000, we'd have to have that, or you're
Sure.
saying leave the percent.
Well, leave the percent, because we're building a computer program to automatically calculate
Yeah,
this.
okay.
And so, the less complicated it is, the easier it's
Yeah.
gonna be, and the
Yeah.
less problems we'll have. So maybe we could keep it how it is now, but at a certain point, you know, the max we'll ever charge, you know, if you bring in a, you know, $150 million facility and a $300 million, they pay the same,
Yeah.
it's just a cap, but it's less than they would if they didn't have the cap. That may be easier. I don't know. What does the rest of the board think? Joe, Sherry?
I brought, in case you didn't have, I brought the documents from each of those counties,
Yeah.
if you
Sure.
need them.
Well, that would kind of keep this fee structure as it is now, because we've been putting out a lot of building permits now. It'd be, I don't know if it would be a good idea to redo the whole structure, but if we put the cap on there, if we do have any big building projects, that shouldn't be an inhibitor anymore.
No, we just gotta determine that.
Sure. And you know, at the
What
same time, when you do have those big, you know, companies come in, part of the reason you want them is because they can pay a little bit more, because, you know, a lot of times they're world-class companies, so.
I think this, like several other items that we talked about
Sure.
tonight, need to be
Okay.
thought about and voted on it or discussed at the next meeting. But that's,
Yeah, I'd support either a cap or whatever on
Well,
those large projects.
You'd almost hate to redo the structure now, as a lot of people have already got their, you know, building permits for smaller things. If we do a cap, that'll kind of accomplish what you're getting at, and we'll still keep the fee structure similar.
well, that will on the really big ones, but 100 million, unless you use the $1.50 per thousand number. If we stick with that $1.50 per thousand, I think that works for all sizes, the smaller agricultural ones and the larger ones. If you just set a fee cap of $1.50 per thousand, not to exceed 250,000 or 300,000 or 500.
Whatever, yeah.
Do you want to have this as a discussion for next month, or is that what you want to keep on?
That's what I'd recommend.
Okay. Anyone from the audience want to speak on this? Going once, going twice, all right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I just want to ask up
Go
here,
ahead.
if anyone has strong feelings one way or the other, I would say bring an option and then we'll pick one instead of just continue discussion, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess I would be hesitant if the intent is to not have a big fee for the big projects. I guess I would be hesitant to decrease our dollar per thousand lower for, you know, commercial or ag or whatnot. Instead, I think if we just put that cap, and I don't know where that cap would be, that's where we could decide, that might be, you know, a little bit more palatable. That way, we're keeping the building permit the same for all types of property, but it has a cap for the bigger ones, so. Do you have anything else to add, Joe or Sherry?
No, I guess,
Well, if we're charging this % for commercial and this % for ag and this, it's gonna be kind of really messy when they make that computer program, so. I'm sorry, Joe, did you have something?
no, I just was gonna say if that was what your intention is, just get it in black and white, and if, you know, if we're looking at a fee cap versus that or whatever, let's get something hard that we can just make a decision on.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay. Do you want to kind of get a number, like, whatever that is, and we'll talk about it next time? All right, anything else? All right, moving on. Number 23, we were going
sorry,
to have it
let's go back to that quick.
Okay, 22, yes.
If we are gonna modify that, and I don't see on here our 911 sign fees, unless I'm missing it. I thought we did that on the same
That was on the
resolution.
original one, but then when we did the resolution, it was removed because they weren't sure on what the costs were.
Okay,
So, so that's the resolution to increase them was on.
Okay.
I think before it was kind of an agreement that this is what we did, and then the resolution was the official one.
so those signs, the E911 signs didn't change.
Well, they can, I mean, but that was kind of just for the zoning and planning, the program for Beacon. Now, if you want to raise them for the actual signs, we certainly can.
No.
We'll have to do a
No,
resolution.
Paul expressed concern with whatever was proposed. I wanted to,
Okay.
if I was gonna revert back or
Okay.
something, because he's got
Sure.
actual costs here of
Okay.
his signs now, so.
Okay.
But.
Do you want to put that on the agenda for next meeting?
And reading through those different counties' programs, they talk about how you get it at the cost. Whether you use contractor's bid price, whether you use actual expenses after, think about those things too.
Right.
Is the proposal for that to have the highway department guys do that, or what? I mean, I think that at one point was, if we are having two guys in the highway department with a pickup driving around, I mean, that's a significant cost.
The E911 signs, it's just, you pick
Okay.
them up.
Well, part
And
of the
that's-
problem too is that's how it is now, and people pick them up and they never put them up.
There's a proposed change to the ordinance
Okay.
for that though, where you can't get your building permit until you pick up your sign.
Yeah.
You can't force them to stick it in the ground, but they gotta pick it up.
When I talked to Larry Nichols, he said for what he would recommend is that they actually just either cost us a little bit higher and they have somebody go do it, because they say a lot of times people will pick them up and they never post them, and then they're not finding the place when they respond to an emergency. So, yeah.
And what happens when they're full of bullet holes.
Yeah,
and all that, so-
exactly. So, all right, anything else on that one? Can we go on to 23?
Yep, go on,
All
sorry.
right. 23, discussion on amending no-through trucks resolution. Who wants to take this one?
Rob did say that he would make corrections, so he doesn't have it.
Okay. So, all right. So another next meeting item? Do we want to discuss anything? on
Because
that?
there's a $500 maximum, correct?
Believe, that's an email I got from the sheriff said that.
So our $2,500 fee needs to be $500, so. I've already talked to Mike about how we can change the signs we ordered.
Oh, yeah.
So we don't have to put them in the trash.
I'm pretty sure that topic was covered in our meeting.
Duct tape.
Do we need to take action, or do we, well, I mean, I suppose we have to
Oh,
vote for
yeah,
a new
we have no,
resolution.
yep, we have no resolution to approve, so that's next
Okay.
meeting.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? All right. Item number 24, public comment. Anybody care to make a public comment? Joe, you want to check on the sheet for me, please?
there's nobody before.
Louis Johnson, Vollen, have to agree with Gary, we're paying the state's attorney and 2 deputies, and nobody's ever here to explain what can be done and can't be done, and it's caused a lot of backtracking, a lot of mistakes, and everything else, and unfortunately, it's probably gonna lead to a lot of lawsuits. And I'd like to have a job where I don't have to show up and get paid. And between the 3 of them, there should be somebody that would be available, or they have to be available. And that's enough on that, but to me, it's ridiculous that they're not here. The other thing on Mr. Remper's test wells, how do we know the water's not polluted already? Because there's a lot of livestock up in that area.
Wouldn't that be what your first test well reading would
I mean,
indicate?
the pollution in the water travels back and forth like the water does.
Yeah, well, you bring up an interesting point, but it seems to me
Public
like
comment, you can't talk about it.
Oh, that's right, thanks, Gary, I can't talk to you.
Anyway, no, that was just, you should have a benchmark to start from, but that's all I have, thank you.
Thank you. Next person is Ray Epps. Welcome. Give you 3 minutes.
I respect Commissioner Kettering's concept that a precedent has to be set. I take great pride in what I do, and I know I do it right. And so I respect that concept. But I also have significant feeling for Mr. Remfer. He's a young man. Certain people can more easily handle a $6,000 situation. Chairman Clemish's regard in the investment amount. If you're gonna spend 400,000, 6,000 isn't that much. When I had my pigs custom nurseried, I had to pay $7 a pig to the person nurturing them. After that is when you take out your building and stuff like that. Very significant point made there on a $6,000 one-time fee. That's why the zoning was set up, if 1,000 animal unit, the DNR. It does not matter what people think of DNR, whatever. That was the way the zoning was set up. They would come in and they would do the monitoring. That is why the ordinance was set up that way. If somebody puts up 2 2,400 head barns, then the water monitoring is affected. None of those have taken in play as of yet. We have regards for this in our zoning and planning. You made a decision, I appreciate that fact, and you can't per se backtail. But here we have a young man, and that $6,000 coming out of the chute like that is going to be tough on the young man. Please consider that in future references, because if we're going to follow that precept of thought, if somebody wants to build a $250,000 house in the country in ag, means they're going to have a septic. And in my opinion, that septic will contaminate a lot quicker than a vaulted pit would. So if you're going to have a producer of 200 animal units monitor his well, if somebody's going to build a $250,000 house, maybe that needs to be packed into their billing too.
Thank you. Anyone else care to make a public comment? Now would be the time to do so. Going once, going twice, all right, I'll go ahead. Close public comment. Anything from commissioner updates? You got anything, Gary?
Nothing right now.
Anything tonight, Don? Joe,
Sorry,
Sherry,
missed it.
anything tonight? Commission updates?
Just a second. Since I can't run my phone, I guess I'll run my mouth. All right, we had our, and I can still hear the phone, just a second. Me and electronics don't work very well. We had our last road task force meeting. I can't remember what day it was, but at this point, we feel we're done with the road task force meetings per se. I need to write a report and to present that at the next commission meeting. So that's 3 weeks from now. We'll have on the agenda to present the road task force report along with the map we created. At that meeting, we cannot take action on it. We can only take action at the meeting following because it's being presented at that meeting. So just to give you an idea where we're at on that. The ambulance, I wrote an editorial in the paper a couple weeks ago. So kind of the plan with the ambulance is to do kind of what we did with the road task force. Once we kind of close this out a little bit, is then to start putting some folks together to figure out maybe a strategy going forward. There's been a lot of concern of the cost of that department. I'm not saying one way or the other what we shouldn't do, but I do think it's worth a look at to see what other people are doing, and then to move forward. So we probably wouldn't start that until January, February of 2020 with the holidays and such like that. We are working with District 3 on some FEMA mitigation projects maybe to come. So those discussions are happening because we have deadlines coming up in December and I think March. So if you are part of a township and you were looking for mitigation money, deadlines are coming up for you to get your projects and stuff to District 3, small towns in the same boat. So I encourage anybody involved at those organizations to get a hold of District 3, and it doesn't hurt to apply for money. That's all I've got.
I do.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Gary Better is starting Monday as our new planning and zoning, actually director of department services. Director, he comes from Brown County. He was a commissioner assistant for a number of years, has zoning experience, has floodplain mitigation experience, has
Human resources.
Human resources. He worked as human resources for them as well. So he comes with a breadth of knowledge that's needed, and you know, we're more than happy to welcome him. And so he'll be starting the 21st. Please don't flood the office the first week. We'll give him some time to get his feet on the ground.
Appointment only,
We're already gonna be flooding him pretty good.
But that's all I have.
All right. I don't have anything, so, do we have?
Dan?
Yes. Did you have?
brought up to me, I'm sorry,
Sure.
on
Go ahead.
items for next meeting? Is
Yeah.
that what we're on?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Would it be appropriate for us to have a session where we talk about the pros and cons of the two township organizations? Because I kind of think there's, with the one township that's thinking about leaving our
Organized, unorganized.
Abolishing.
If only we had a past chairman of a board like that who could talk about that.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to do it, and I can't remember what day the vote is.
29th.
29th?
Of October.
Okay.
They'll be voting the 29th on which direction they want to go.
I think it's important that people know that their services may be altered considerably.
I talked to some commissioners from up north, and when a township unorganized, a lot of roads got closed down just because they couldn't afford it. So So did you want to have some sort of special meeting then, if it's before that? I mean, we certainly could. I mean,
I
if
think
that's kind of
it'd be
short notice.
worthwhile for people to understand both sides of the story. I'm sure they're hearing one side.
All right, I guess if you guys wanna, you two, since you're on the roads, wanna put something together, and if you feel it's important, I would be willing to call either a special meeting or just allow you guys to come in and have a presentation in here, I think would be appropriate, if that's something you guys wanted to do.
Well, if we do one, I think we should do it out there, so people don't have to come here. I don't know if there's a place in Mission Hill that we can do it or not,
Probably
We
talk to
have
the
it at
mayor.
church.
if they'd allow us to use their basement or whatever. But yeah, just to talk about how the west side of the county, services aren't any more stellar, I guess, so.
It's a
And just the
good idea,
path forward.
Don. Yeah.
I mean, it's gonna be a big change for the county if that does pass.
Well, if it passes, everything, is brought into my office, and it is abolished. There is no county.
Yep.
But there's no
Exactly.
township and, yep.
No.
They need to know that they may not get
There
snow
will be-
removal as quick, the roads graded as quick. They're in control of their own environment now.
So,
It's a good point.
yep.
Is there anything else we wanted to add for next meeting before we adjourn?
Are we finished? I'd just like to make one comment.
Go ahead. Give you a moment. Go
Okay.
ahead, Gary.
When Mr. Johnson was up and we talked about the absent 3 individuals that could be here, I thought of something that happened to me back when I was in the military. I had a CIA Central Intelligence agent tell me, he said, "You and the men that you command are like a log chain." And I said, what do you mean by that? He said, "You're only as strong as your weakest link." And it's just like the county commission, the 5 of us, and we're missing a link. And right now, like the one comment was, it's caused a lot of trouble for both sides.
All right. Thanks, Gary. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed. Thank you, everybody.